here we go. Um, so this will be the update video where I focus on my journey and listening and output, as opposed to the last one, which was entirely reading based. Um, so just some disclaimers going in. This will be a very long video. I'm sure you can already see how long it ended up being. And this, much like my last video, it will be filled with some advice, probably less than the last one for reasons I'll go into in a minute. But any advice is kind of under the assumption that you are going to be shooting for a very high level in listening or output. So people who are general hobbyists learning Japanese and maybe just have dreams of one day passing N1 or N2 or something like that, you might not find that a lot of this applies to you. I don't want to have to preface everything I say with if you plan on getting to so-and-so level. So just keep that in the back of your head, back of your mind while you're listening to this. And for those of you who aren't as hardcore, maybe just take bits and pieces that you think apply to you, or just listen for the fun of listening. Either one works for me. So this will be a bit different from my last video because I will be discussing listening and output in parallel, sort of, because I did learn them together. And a lot of what I did was based off of my experience as I was learning, whereas reading was very simple, right? I did wanikani, then I learned like with VNs, light novels, and that's about it. Like there wasn't much variance in what I actually did. For listening and output, there's a bit more variance because there's more aspects, right? So there will be a lot more meat to the story as I go through my initial journey, I guess you could say. But before that, I wanted to recap my prior experience with Japanese, learning to read, right? Because I feel like it would be very disingenuous to say that I started listening without any background. So I started listening when I came to Japan, but before that, I did have a lot of experience reading. I estimate, I think, somewhere around 6,000 hours practicing reading and actual like reading and doing SRS, all that stuff. So the general the summary of the last video essentially is I used wanikani. While I was using wanikani, I went full speed. But early in wanikani, I started reading a visual novel, adding words into a separate SRS called Hoho. I did like some of the core deck. So by the time I finished wanikani, I had some experience reading and a good chunk of words under my belt that were not in wanikani. Didn't do a whole lot of grammar outside of the stuff that was relevant to what I was reading. But then I hopped into light novels after that using Flow, which basically it's like JPDB, where it just tells you words that are in the book that you're reading. I would learn words in the book I was reading. These were light novels again. And I would also learn the grammar I came across as I came across it, primarily just through exposure. I SRS'd like a little bit, didn't like it. And I just did that, honestly, like for thousands of hours. And yeah, and then moved over to Anki, rather than Flow, but same deal, just SRSing words I learned from books. And yeah, so by the time I got here, anyway, so like this is, okay, I'm in Japan now, this is where the listening journey starts, and speaking. So by the time I got here, I was able to read, like, if you know what Bakemonogatari is, like something like that, without a dictionary, with relative ease. So a decent level in listening, or a decent level in reading. Now, where was my listening and speaking at? Well, they were dog shit, quite frankly. So like when I was in quarantine, I had to prepare a jiko shokai it's like a self-introduction for my contracting organization. I was gonna go into City Hall and actually like introduce myself to people working in the education department. And if you know anything about Japanese Jukushokai, it's like it's not a big deal. Like everyone does it. It's very short. But like, who are you? Where are you from? And like, yoroshiku mitaina. Um, and I remember making that was very very difficult. I hopped on a call with my boss basically when I was in quarantine when I came here. It was during Corona, um, and I guess just to test out my Japanese level, they start off in Japanese. At least my contracting organization did, and I had significant trouble even saying like I have a brother. I am from Missouri. I'm from Missouri. If you didn't know, I'm from the U.S. Um, Very basic stuff I could not say, and it was very like I wasn't surprised. So I got to Japan, right, but I had been here before, and I had like my friend dragged me out to a bar before in Hiroshima, and I had seen how bad I was at speaking relative to my reading, so it wasn't a shock necessarily, but like I got here and I was really like, wow, like I cannot do anything, like I cannot output, like if you tell me this is correct, like I would be like, oh yeah, like I've seen this before, that this sounds right, this makes sense, but coming up with it myself was incredibly difficult at the time. In a similar fashion, so I moved into my city where I am now, and I tried listening to some anime. So what you need to know is, again, my recap of my journey was basically the recap. Like there was no listening or speaking involved before I came to Japan. I think I could maybe count like actual listening practice, maybe like 10 hours, 10, 20 out of the 6,000 or so. Spread out over several years, of course, right? Amounts to basically nothing. So I came here to my city, and I remember moving into where I am now, actually, and watching Otakoi, which is like an anime, and really could not understand like anything. Put on Japanese subtitles, and it was like easy, right? Because it's reading, right, at that point. It wasn't that there was, um, it wasn't that there was words I didn't know or grammar I didn't know. It was like processing the auditory information. Okay. So, okay, now I have a problem. I can't process the auditory information. Like, where do I go from there? Okay, so what I did was, um, like, the first thing I noticed, I remember it really stuck out to me, was the word kudo. It's like kurushi no ku. I guess you wouldn't really say that, but whatever. And like nodo, I guess would be the do. But yeah, it's a basic word, probably like top 2,000 like frequency. Um, and I remember I heard it, and then something I was listening to, and like I could not remember for the life of me what it was. And then I look it up, and I was like, oh yeah, like how like how could I not know this? And it became very clear to me that how I could know it was that reading, I was reliant on kanji essentially. I've gotten better at reading like strictly hiragana, where it's like kid stuff, but still, it was like I realized I was very reliant on the kanji, and I kind of like bumbled around for it. I really didn't do a whole lot, honestly, when I first got here. I did a lot more speaking, which involved maybe like I joined Hello Talk, got a few partners to speak with. Also, just speaking with people at work. I got a guy I play with like on Apex, if you know what Apex Legends is. So like I kind of had this problem for a few months. I didn't really do anything about it. I was just kind of like, oh, let's just listen, and like I'll get better, and I did to some extent. But um, those of you who know me, like that's not how I like to go about things. I don't like to just do it and like, oh, we'll get there eventually. It's like, no, I want to do like dedicated practice, trying to listen to things I want to listen to, do the things I want to do, fail, and like deliberately improve. So at some point what I had done was, um, like when my listening practice truly started was when I started an audiobook. The first audiobook I started was Higihiro, I want to think. The like I forget what the English title is. It's like Higi Osotte Juskosei Hiro. I think is the Japanese title, but I forget what it is in English. Maybe it's just a direct translation. Anyway, not important. It's like a light novel, right? Basically. So I watched the anime, and then I was like, I found the light novel on a audiobook site. It was like Audible, I think. And so essentially what I decided to do was I was like, okay, I really had a hard time enjoying any other spoken content. Like I didn't watch much anime anymore. Um, and so I was like, okay, well I enjoy light novels. So let's try listening to an audiobook. And the idea was simple. So I kind of spoke on this problem a bit earlier, but my problem was that I would hear words that I knew without realizing that that was that word and like associating it with the relevant kanji, right? So my idea was, let's listen to an audiobook where we have a whole bunch of words, like a non-stop flow of words, right? Because conversation, it's like there's like togire togire, like it's like there's like breaks and stuff in between, um, and you know, like a lot of it's less dense. I was like, let's take an audiobook, which is nothing but constant speaking, and it'll be something that I know I can read, like I know I'll be able to read it. So like I know realistically I can operate under the assumption that every word I'm hearing is something I know, which is a very, very big help. I'll go into that in a second. And I was like, okay, and let's just try to hear the words, right? Because if I can hear the words, I'll know what the sentence means, right? Because I have the grammar knowledge and knowledge of the words. I just need to identify the words. So what I did was I put it up on my computer. I got the audiobook, put it up on my computer, and I like would I'd blindfold myself basically. I'd lean back in my chair at my desk, and I had like a hotkey to go back 10 seconds. And every time I like couldn't understand something, I just go back and listen to it again, and then again, and then again, and then like usually the problem was jukugo words, which are like kanji compounds. My chair is squeaking. Hopefully that isn't too annoying. The problem was primarily kanji compounds. So a lot of it was me flipping through kanji compounds in my head, basically like what would fit this context. And what I found was it was surprisingly easy. Like it was easy to get 100% comprehension, in the sense that there was, I think I can count in the whole book. I remember one or two spots where I had to actually pull up in the physical book, to check. But that was only like two spots. The rest of it was like it was very, very heavy cognitive load because I was like constantly flipping back, re-listening again while blindfolded, and like giving it my full attention, brain at 120% capacity. But doing that, I was able to understand like just about everything, right? I was able to get every word. And it was like the writing of light novels is like so ingrained in my head that like the flow of writing was a big hint to the word I was listening to, right? So it really helped with that. Like my experience with light novels really helped with that because there's like a writing style, right, to light novels, generally. And so what this helped with was I was like indexing words in my head with their audio cue, right? Because before it was like look at the kanji, recall meaning and reading, right? Now it's listen to it, and recall meaning and reading, right? Or I guess not really reading, but you know what I mean. And like have those pieces of knowledge be connected. Like this word, right, is like exists in my head. It has like a dictionary entry in my head. It's like, and it's like when I see it, okay, it comes to this dictionary entry. But I didn't have this where it was like when I listened to it, when I heard it, it would connect back to that entry. So a lot of my practice was like forming that connection, the listening audio cue to that entry in my head, my internal dictionary. And what can I say? It was amazing. It worked wonders. And I continued with this form of practice, which I'll go into later. But for now, it's time to take a detour. So around this time, I had also taken GLPT, the N1. I took it a few months after I got here. And so this was around this time. I had done a bit of speaking. I'd done a bit of listening. I think I'd listened to, I could check actually exactly how much. Actually, could I have my book meter up right now? Does it tell you when you added stuff? Yeah, so I had really, I forget when the GLP2 was exactly, but yeah, it would have been around this time. So I had just really listened to the one audiobook. Maybe two, actually. I have one on here. And maybe I also listened to as well. So that was like relatively like right before the GLPT. And in terms of reading, I've been reading a bit. And I took N1, for those who didn't know. And yeah, so my philosophy, my idea going in was, I say idea, it was also partially just me being a bit of a contrarian. One of my CIRs at what do you say, Kenjo in English? Like, what is, I don't even know, like the city hall, but not the city hall. It's like the prefectural city hall. He, during like a meeting with all the jets, he said something along the lines of like, if you want to pass N1, like you have to, like you got to study for it, like you got to practice the reading. And I remember like listening to that, and I was like, really? Like, I found that very hard to believe, because I remember like going through and looking at some of the stuff for GOPT N1. In my opinion, was a lot of the comments on difficulty seemed to be overblown. And so I was like, okay, let's like run an experiment. I'm not going to study for it. I'm not going to do any. I didn't buy any like prep books or do any like quizzes or anything like that. I did the GLPT. I did one of the passes. I didn't do the whole thing actually. I did about 60% of it. And before I was like, wow, like this is easy. Like there's no point even continuing this. I was like, let's try the GLPT just with my study, like my style of learning, and see how good I can do. So around this time, I had taken the GLPT, and I was blessed with the stomach flu right the night before, and so I didn't really sleep. I felt like absolute shit. It was horrible. And to top it off, I rode my bike to the 7-Eleven, what you're not supposed to do, by the way. I rode my bike to the 7-Eleven, and this was a 7-Eleven by like the testing center, so I just parked my bike there. I got a coffee as well. I was like, I'll just drink the coffee and it'll wake me up, right? Because I hadn't slept much the night before. I barely slept at all. I left my freaking coffee in my bike basket, so I got to the testing thing, and it was too late to leave, so I was like, okay, whatever, like, and this is something I'll go into later, but I was like, if I really know the content, like, as much as being sleepy hurts my comprehension and all that, I'm like, if I really know this stuff and I deserve to pass, I should be able to do it even while I'm like running on no sleep and I'm sick. Because like natives can speak, natives can read when they're sleepy and sick. Like it doesn't, right? Unless you take a copious amount of drugs, it's like it doesn't really impair your language ability, right? To like a debilitating degree. It's like fuck it, let's just do it. Ended up, so I rushed through like the reading. I slept for like 40 minutes or 45 minutes or so. I just like took a nap, did the listening, woke up, did the listening, and like long story short, I passed. So I mean, obviously I got the results back much later. I think I ended up with a perfect score in the language knowledge. I missed like one question on listen or reading. I think I had like a 58 or 56 maybe. It was like one of those. It was like just like a point or two below perfect. I forget which one it was. And then my listening was like I should have checked. I think it was in like the 40s, low 40s maybe. But I mean, I don't know. I have some opinions about the listening. I think it's like hella curved because I did not. I guessed on like half of those, and because I just woken up, I was like tired. I was like, I remember thinking they would be read twice. Um, so I kind of like I gave up listening the first time around, and then I realized it wasn't gonna be It wasn't gonna be spoken twice. And so for the first section, I filled in random answers. For the second one, where it was like conversation, I felt really like I was like I was confident I got all those right. Which would be about half the points, but I think I got over half score wise. I was like, this is like kind of sus, right? Um, but anyway, so that was like my level at the time, right? So to put in perspective, like I'm a beginner in the sense that I just began, but it's still good enough to pass N1, right? With quite a bit of leeway. I think I had like one total score is like 160 something. Um, so so yeah, maybe it was 160. Yeah, I don't remember honestly. It's just 3 years ago now. I don't remember. Um, so that was like my level at the time. And so going back to this, yeah. So I guess I'll jump back to output. So like again at this time, so I'd done like basic outputting, and a lot of my experience with outputting was I would have like I would be able to output and read my output and realize like wow this is like shit, like something is wrong here, but I don't know what. And but like if someone told me hey you should use this word instead or you should word it like this, um it would always be like an aha moment. There's very few instances where it felt like I was learning something new. And in almost all the cases when I had my output corrected, it was they were correcting me with something I was already familiar with. It was a grammar usage or word usage I was already familiar with. It was just that I didn't have the capacity to come up with it on my own. But I could see it and be like, oh wait, yeah, this is like much better. You know. So that helped a lot for like speed of improvement. So I always talk about how I felt like I had an EXP boost when it came to speaking and listening as well, and that was where it came from. Like any correction I got, it wasn't like because usually when you're corrected on something, like you're given a new piece of knowledge, and it's like okay, I got to learn this, and then like learn to utilize it. But in my case, it was like it was a tool I had all along. I just didn't realize I had it. So I was like, oh wait, yeah, I can just use this here. And that what that translated into was me being able to use the corrections I got almost immediately. It's like I was immediately able to incorporate them into my Japanese because it was all stuff I was already familiar with. It was just like the process of digging it up from within me was difficult. And the other issue I had at the time that's worth noting, I had two. One of them was that I was using way too difficult of words. Like typically I would use, I can't remember any specific instances, sorry. But when at work, I remember using words where my coworkers were like, whoa, like, why do you know that word? And I'm using it, not trying to like impress people, but thinking that that's like a legitimately normal word, when it wasn't. And so like it was very probably uncanny for them to hear. And I think that just resulted from two things. One, from my input primarily being novels, like specifically light novels. Light novel authors like to use fancy words sometimes, which was a pro when learning to read, not so much a pro when that's your basis for speaking. And another one, the words I was learning at the time from books, like obviously all the common words I'd already learned, right? So they weren't in my SRS anymore. But the difficult words that appear once every 50 books or so, were the words I was learning, right? Because that's all that's left to learn. And so those were coming up in my SRS, which means that they were naturally like at the front of my mind, I think. And so I think that also contributed me using them more than I should have. Which when I say more than I should have used them as zero. Um, and part of me thought at the time, that it was like cool to know all these difficult words, and like especially for reading. And for reading, like it's cool. Like I think I did some kanji quizzes with my coworkers, and it's funny because I beat them all. Like no one could beat me. No one could beat me in like a difficult word reading quiz. Um, my girlfriend, same thing, to shreds. Not even close. And the reaction was always like, "Why the hell do you know all this crap?" And I thought it was pretty cool. I still think it's kind of cool, but there's like what I quickly realized is like if you had a Japanese person who was like struggling to string together sentences in English, and then they like whipped out a really big word, you wouldn't really think, wow, this person's really good at English. You'd be like, what the hell is this person doing? Why do they know this word if they can't even put basic sentences together, right? So it's like if you don't have the rest of the language to go with it, it's like a rare word every now and then is like, it's more of a question mark rather than like a, oh wow, cool type deal. Japanese people are so supportive of foreigners learning their language. I don't they would never verbalize that though, but those who can read the kuki might pick up on that. So yeah, and I mean, I would find it cringe as well. I find people who use difficult words in English pretty cringe as well, like literary words in everyday conversation. So it was like, it was a very strong motivating force for me to like get rid of those. And I started to see a lot in other foreigners, Japanese. Like there's often like much easier ways to say things, but foreigners, like maybe it's because it's like what comes up first in the dictionary. But like they tend to overuse like jukugo words that are a bit too difficult. And so I was prime culprit of this. So a lot of my output was not just improving my Japanese, but like simplifying it down, and like simplifying it in like a good way. Like I mean, simple is better. Like the way I'm speaking right now, you know, I'm not using too difficult of words, I think. And that's how like normal conversation is. Like the goal isn't to be creative in how you speak. It's just like to get a message across, and the most typical ways of doing that are typical, like they're common ways. They're regular, simple, basic ways. And yeah, and I guess I could dive. I mean, God, how long do I want to make this video? Like, I could dive into that. Like, there's ways of expressing things in Japanese. Like, so like, if you want to express the concept in English and in Japanese, like, the same concept might be expressed a different way. It's like the most basic example I can think of this is like 行かなければならない, or like 勉強しなければならない. Like I have to do something. 行かないとダメ. Like it's like need to go, or like the whole like negative, like negative conditional negative thing. But if you say like something in English, it's like 何々する必要がある, right? And you need to do, like there's like a necessity, like 必要性がある, 必要がある. It's like the need exists. But if you say it that way in Japanese, it comes across as like stiff. Like, I mean, like people do say it. Like I've heard it before. It's not that they don't say it, but like you have to be careful that if you express certain thoughts in an English way, it can come across differently in Japanese. And oftentimes I find that, yeah, expressing things in English ways make it easier. How do you say? If you express things in English, it like will make your Japanese sound more stiff. Like if you want to say like I shouldn't have gone, like people might say ikubeki janakatta, right? Like if they're a foreign speaker, um, or like なんか言ったことを後悔している, right? But it's like Japanese people would usually say is like 行かなければよかった, like if it would have been like good if I didn't go, which is like it uses, how do I say this? God, I'm sorry. I should have really prepared this explanation. Hopefully, people might understand what I'm trying to say. But like, the way you express the same thought, the same resultant thought being expressed, might take a different path to get there in Japanese. Very often, it does. There's a lot of things where it's like if you want to express it in Japanese, and you want to have the listener imagine the same thing, it's like you have to express it in a different way. If you want to sound natural. And so a lot of those things I struggled with as well at first. But I think I got over it quick. And the reason why was because of my background in reading and my general pattern, the way I spoke, which was when I went to say something, it was like I would just kind of imagine what I had heard before in books, which is why it was so difficult, which is why I used more difficult Japanese, right? But I never took an approach of translating in my head. I did my best to like not fall into that pattern, and I think I did a good job. I think I managed that pretty well. And I think that's because I never took classes. I strictly just like learned by like inputting and trying to understand sentences and then like mining those sentences, right? So to me, Japanese and English were like very, very separate in my head, which you'll see will pop up later. Like that it'll be a recurring theme, both good and bad. That is a thing. But like in my head, Japanese and English were very separate. Oh, I was gonna say something. I completely forgot what it was. That's what I get for rambling. But anyway, yeah. So learning to express myself in a Japanese way was another struggle at the time. But I think I adapted quicker than most because of my strong foundation, right? And yes, okay. So what I was gonna say was how I deal with learning or how I deal with speaking is that I usually just wait for things to like bubble to the surface. Okay. And so this will be very important going into my next point. So back to listening. So that was like my speaking at the time. This is again a few months in. So okay. So back to listening. I was like, yeah, so this listening with a light novel or audiobooks is like really, really good. Let me try that some more. And so I got a light novel called Jiaku Kyara Tomozaki-kun, which is bottom tier character Tomozaki-kun, I think. Anyway, I got that, and it had a whole series behind it. And so I listened to the audiobooks in a similar fashion as before, rewinding. I set on my phone. I actually got like a hotkey on my phone using an app. I did my volume button down twice to rewind, volume button up twice to pause. I would blindfold myself. I'd meditate. I usually meditate, then go into my room, blindfold myself, sit cross-legged usually, sometimes lay down, and just like listen. Usually for like about 30 minutes to an hour at a time. And again, very, very high mental strain. Very, very high mental strain. But I was able to have very, very high comprehension. So it felt like my comprehension was primarily based off of my effort I was putting in. which prompted me to put in more effort, right? Because it was like, if I put in 20% more, I can understand 20% more. It wasn't like put in 20% more and like get nothing out of it. There was noticeable change. And very quickly, I was able to start increasing the speed of the audiobook. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but like 5% for like a learner is like it's a good amount. So I increased like 5% at first. Then I went to 10, 20. I think I got up to like 125% speed for the audiobook, right? And I got much better at listening. I was indexing a lot of words. And yeah, I was indexing a ton of words. What do I want to say? But yeah, so it sped up, and I think I got a lot of benefit out of that. Like I was able to index a lot of words in my head. But the thing with light novels, like audiobooks specifically, is that just because you can listen to audiobooks doesn't mean that you can listen to normal conversation. So like the thing about light novels, or like audio, I keep saying light novels, audiobooks versus normal conversation is like, think about it for a second. What is difficult about light novels or audiobooks? The vocabulary size, right? What is easy about light novels, or audiobooks specifically? Well, they are all clean sentences that have been edited through. They're spoken at a reasonable pace, and they're spoken like in like an audio studio. What do you say? Where it's like the sound quality is really good. They're speaking it's clean, unbroken Japanese, proper Japanese, at a very comfortable, clear pace. But it has a lot of words. And then you look at listening with like zatsudan, like what do you say? Like regular conversation. And the easy part is it doesn't have a lot of words. There's usually like less words compared to novels, at least. I mean, there's still a good amount of words, but compared to novels, there's fewer. The hard part, though, is that it's not always spoken clean or slow. A lot of Japanese people will like kind of change their thought mid-sentence. Like I've probably done multiple times this video. They'll stutter over themselves like I just did, or stumble over their own words. They'll reword things mid-sentence. They'll omit a lot, all sorts of stuff. Okay, so the difficult and easy aspects of audiobooks and regular everyday spoken Japanese are flipped, more or less, right? So they have underlying similarities, right? Like it's still spoken Japanese, but you're still listening, but it's just the difficult aspects of one cannot be trained with the other, really. I tried to like manually emulate it by speeding up my audiobook, which worked to some extent, but like at the end of the day, like it's not the same. And so like proof of this was I would go to Netflix, which is like, you'd think an anime it should be objectively easier than a light novel, but actually like I had trouble with anime as well. I think a big reason was because, like I said, with light novels, it was like the flow of the light novel really helped. And also like the clarity, I think, also really helps. And that's been a recurring problem, is like I have trouble hearing things. But so I went over to Netflix, and what I did was you got an app called Language Learning with Netflix, which currently is called Language Reactor. And so that like allowed me to like basically toggle my subtitles. I could toggle my subtitles on and off. And what I would do is I would just watch anime. I think I watched something like, what did I watch? I watched like Mushoku Tensei and a few others. But I would watch it and inevitably not be able to hear things. Pause it, listen again, pause it, listen again. If I couldn't get it, check the subtitles, make them unblurred, check the subtitles. Oh, I watched like Kaguya as well. Kaguya-sama wa kokurasetai, um, and like other stuff. And yeah, so like just get practicing listening is the same process. And yeah, um, that was, I guess, the beginning era of my listening, I would say. That was like the early days of my listening. So at this point, probably, oh man, I don't even know how many months had passed. Maybe like 8, 7 or 8. I could check the exact amount, but it wasn't. It was like a year at most, maybe. Um, so then things started changing. Um, I guess actually, yeah. Okay. So two things happened. So one, so I got a girlfriend. The girlfriend I got in like September. So yeah, it was like just under a year, right? And I'll start from there, I guess. So girlfriend, which meant a lot more chances to speak, and we would speak, right? Obviously, and possibly more importantly it was chances for me to feel like I was bad and give me reason to improve. Like there would be things that I wanted to express to my girlfriend specifically that I would have trouble with, right? Which would prompt me to think more about how to express certain things, yada yada yada. At work, it's like you know, work. It's a lot of the same patterns over and over, right? So, I find that it's like limited in how much it actually helps your speaking and whatever, because like your uchiawase are like always gonna cover the same topics. You know, it's always gonna use the same general vocabulary. There's not a whole lot of variance, surprisingly. So with my girlfriend, yeah, that helped out a lot. I also at the time started chatting with an elderly lady up in northern Japan, I believe, who was learning English. It was on Hello Talk, and I was like, okay, I wanna do journals where I type out like a whole bunch of Japanese. And you just correct like all of it, like a really long entry. I had done some similar like that before on Lane Correct back when I first got here. But my experience on Lane Correct wasn't very good. There's a lot of stuff that was marked correct that other natives would come in as marked incorrect. Like, I guess my assessment of the people correcting on this site was like they had very, very low bars for like what was acceptable, and their bar for what was acceptable Japanese was much lower than mine. So like the corrections, not only did they not mean a whole lot, like when I did get a correction it was good, right? But there's times where I didn't get a correction, and that was like almost harmful in a way to get all perfect, because they were essentially saying that stuff was good that wasn't good, right? So there was stuff that was like unnatural, like clearly unnatural, but it's like it wasn't blatantly grammatically incorrect. So they weren't marking it wrong, and I didn't want to be left with the impression that Japanese I was outputting that was weird was correct, right? Because that's kind of teaching me the wrong thing. So I moved away from that site, and I set out to find someone who would give me more like harsh, like real corrections about how to write in natural Japanese. So I found a person up in northern Japan, and so she corrected a lot of my stuff. I corrected her English, and it was good. Past a certain point, she like workload wise couldn't handle it anymore, so we went our separate ways. But I learned a lot from that period. Like just, like again, these were like long diary entries, and I would just get tons of corrections or alternative ways of phrasing stuff, and that helped out a lot. And yeah, so that was what I was doing at the time. So it was like a big spike in like outputting. Um, yeah, it was a big spike in outputting, and I would say I learned a lot. And after that, I moved on to then just typing in a Google Doc. It's like we went our separate ways, but what I realized was at this point, a lot of what I wanted to say could be said using the patterns I was already very familiar with. Like if I didn't try to be original and like be like, "Ooh, I used this pattern before, so I want to switch it up and use a different word." Like I used this word and I was like, but I want to use it again 3 sentences later. As long as I didn't have anything like that, I realized I was pretty capable of outputting the things I wanted to output, minus some nuance. And it was just a matter of being able to do it on the spot, right? Because when you're in conversation, there's like a built-in time limit before things get weird, right? If someone asks me a question like, "Hey, do you know if it's going to snow later today?" And I take more than like 2 seconds to respond. I just sit there looking at them like, it's going to get awkward. So the ability to recall the Japanese I could recall or produce the Japanese I could produce quickly was a necessity. And I decided that, the hardest time to say something is the first time you've ever said it. So I'll have that first time be in my Google Doc, my diary, and I'll just output a bunch. Get used to saying the things that typically come up in my day-to-day conversations, which again, I would imagine kind of conversations with my girlfriend and my coworkers and like general topics that come up, my opinions about them, or like things I could just say about them, just saying like random shit. And we just type it out. And a lot of it resulted in me having to sit down and think and think and think and think, and oftentimes run into like a brick wall. Because what I would do was I would make it a point to not learn new Japanese when I did it. My idea was like any thought I want to express, like I should have been exposed to it up until now, right? Like just something specifically I can say because I had such a robust history in reading, right? So I knew that there had to be some way to express the thought that I was already familiar with. And often there were like these tips of my tongue moments where like I knew it, and there was like a blurred, like what do you say, katachi, like the shape of the word in my head, like like a tip of your tongue moment, right? Like I had like a blurred idea, bakuzen toshita idea about how to express it, but like I couldn't remember the exact phrasing in Japanese. And so what I did was, after this commercial break, I'll tell you. What I did for that was I had all my books that I read in like one giant thing for Sublime Text. It's like a text editor, and you can have like 80 files open. So I'd converted all the books I read up until that point, almost all of them, into text format, remove the furigana, and put them in text format. And then there's a function in this software, it's text editor, where if you Control-Shift-F, you search across every file. Okay. And so like I would search specifically, you can use regex as well, regular expression. I would search across all these files, and what it would do is when you search, it would give you like a result list. Whereas like this book title, there would be the title of the file, which was just the title of the book. And then it would be like the word, the matching text with like context, like 2 lines before, 2 lines after. And so if I ever wanted to look up like a word as well, imagine like skeyakiba or whatever, I could be like, okay, like is this actually a word that people use, or like what situations do they use it in that I've seen? I can search all the books I've ever read and get a list back of like, here's all the instances you've ever seen this word, right? And so it was helpful because obviously, like, if I was trying to recall a grammatical pattern, like, it would have been because I saw it in a book, right? Not because my listening was comparatively like small in number, right? So all this stuff came from books basically in my head. It was like, okay, let's find out where this blurry thought is coming from, and like I'd search around and try and use it, um, and try and find it, or like just search in general for like, because like yeah, usually I'd have like some semblance of a clue for what I need to search to get it, and I'd find it, and then again use it in my output. But try not. I wouldn't learn anything new. It was just utilizing what I've already been exposed to, um, and yeah. So just like typing out in a diary, and I think in total that diary ended up going like, maybe it's at like 60 or 70,000 characters now, which is pretty long, because again that's not my total output. That's just right, like what I typed up alone in a diary. Put it in perspective, like that was 60,000 characters. Light novels that are on the shorter end will be like around 80,000 characters. Average light novel probably is around 100,000. So in terms of length of text, I outputted quite a bit. And the title of the doc was Road to 50,000 Characters. Like that was the goal, was put out 50,000 and see where I'm at that point. And it helped out a lot. I mean, there's really no way around it. So I gotten better at producing Japanese, and the Japanese I could produce would be more simple and more natural and less like weird convoluted Japanese, like JSL style Japanese, where it's like, yeah, I guess that's the way I would describe most learners' Japanese, including my own, was like convoluted. Like Japanese people are very like to the point. They're like to the point, but not to the point. Like they omit a lot, right? And they tend not to say anything that doesn't need to be said, and sometimes a little bit more, right? And the first like rite of passage for like this would be, for example, foreigners tend to put in watashi wa and like anata wa like whenever they don't need to. Right? There's a lot of situations where you don't need those, or you don't need a subject in general, even if it's a different subject, and they'll put it anyway, right? So that's what I'm referring to. That phenomenon in general is like it's is it tokuyu, it's characteristic of Japan or JSL's like Japanese, right? Because it's something that we don't really do in English. So I was able to manage that a lot, because that was one of the things I got corrections on, by the way, was like you can omit all this. Like if like that was something I asked specifically for. It's like if there's something that you think a Japanese person would omit, like omit it for me. And it became increasingly clear that yeah, like there was a lot that I could cut out of my sentences. And yeah, so that was around where I was at the time. So like just like outputting a lot. I mean, it improved my output noticeably. My listening was also getting better. Like, you know, I was like getting decent, I would say. And so like this is where things start to take a turn, I guess. So this, like, I would say this was, yeah, so this is like the start of my Japanese journey when it came to listening and speaking. I was getting like a foundation. I was like generally able to express the things I wanted to express. And it, like, I guess to borrow the word that people like to use so much, is like at the okay plateau. Or I guess my definition, I guess everyone has like different definitions of what it means to be okay, but like in my mind, I was at the point where I was like okay. Um, and I guess I'll get into the next part after I go to the bathroom. Let me pause the video real quick. Go take a piss or something. All right, I'm back. So yeah, at the time I was at a decent level in Japanese, speaking and listening, and yeah. So this is again around the time. This is I just checked. This is about a year in that all this was happening. Uh, so a year after coming to Japan, right? And so I guess to explain my next steps, it makes sense to explain not what I could do, but I guess what I couldn't do, right? So, first things first, I asked my girlfriend at the time, this is actually a bit later actually, but I asked her, when I asked my girlfriend, um, what what could I improve most about my Japanese? Like, I think I asked, like, what's the worst part about my Japanese, or what's my weakest point in my Japanese? And she replied, pitch accent. Okay. Um, she didn't know the word pitch accent, kote accent, though. Um, she would just say, like, oh, the way you said kohosha was like, you said, like, kohosha. Like, or like something like, I forget what it was, but it was stuff like that, like where it was just like, um, you didn't say enjoy, you said enjoy, right? So it was stuff like, from a learner's perspective, like I knew, like, okay, this is what she's talking about. So that was one thing. Um, but that's from the filter of the listener, right? It's like the problem is the listener, when they hear you speak, they only hear the words you say. They only hear the things you say. They don't know the things that you want to say, if that makes sense. They only know what's outputted. So if you output the things you output well, then it sounds good to them, regardless of, even if you're not exactly outputting the things you want to output. And so that was my self-assessment for what my biggest issue was I felt like at times I was able to output, but one, it wasn't always exactly what I felt like I wanted to say, and two, it felt like it took substantial effort. And I say substantial, like it wasn't like sweat inducing, but like compared to speaking in English, which is like basically effortless, it was like a noticeable amount of work I needed to put in, and they didn't like it. Right? I wanted it to be natural. So on the first thing, not pitch, but on my self-assessment, first thing, there is something to be said about wanting to express certain things and having issues with it as a sort of inevitability coming from English. So, for example, I remember talking with my barber, and my barber, cool dude, super cool dude, he works a lot, and he was talking about going on vacation to Okinawa. And I remember wanting to tell him, dude, like, good on you, enjoy your vacation, you earned it, right? You earned it. And I couldn't. I had trouble expressing the thought. And there have been other cases like this in Japanese where it's like I go to express a concept that feels fairly common in English, and I can't. And for those of you who are at a decent level in Japanese, like, you'll know the reason I could not say you earned it is because they don't really say that in Japanese to begin with. So like if I say, like, you didn't earn your position at work, like it was handed to you, yada yada, like the whole you didn't earn it, or you earn, like the idea that there are people who have stuff like handed to them in life, or things that people work hard enough for to where it's like they deserve it, it's not like a very commonly expressed thing in Japanese. And they have ways of expressing the idea in more roundabout ways, but in terms of to the point, like ways of saying you earned it, all the Japanese usages for the words to earn something don't come with that nuance to them, right? And the reverse is true in English, right? There's just some Japanese words that it's like Japanese people ask me, how do you say this in English? I'm like, well, we kind of don't. Um, the most obvious one would be like yoroshiku and stuff like that. But I mean, they just exist, and they would run me like fixation on expressing ideas in certain ways. It would run me into like walls, right? And this was something that resolved itself over time, and namely resolved itself when I did a certain method that I'll talk about in a second. But so this aspect of not being able to express what you want to express did resolve itself over time. The rest of it, I mean, yeah, I just felt like I needed to get better. Because there was times where it was like, yeah, I could express myself, but like, you know, it felt like it was at a lower resolution than I wanted it to be. So around this time, I had gotten into VTubers, and specifically with VTubers, I didn't watch much Jikyo. I watched more like Zatsudan, which is like just like talking streams. They just talk. And yeah, so I guess what I should say at this time is like I wanted to focus on both speaking and listening, honestly. Because I mentioned earlier, like the shortcom I felt like I had shortcomings in my speaking, but honestly, my speaking felt like it was improving so fast that it was constantly overtaking my listening. So while I wasn't satisfied with my speaking, it felt like listening just made my speaking better, and I think it did. It made it so much better, and I was speaking at work as well, and with my girlfriend. It was like speaking just naturally took the lead, and so I ended up going back and like focusing. I dedicated more time to listening for sure. Listening was the harder of the two to raise my level 4, right? So I was doing these, like, I was listening to like YouTube videos and whatnot, and I had like a realization, and realization might not be the right word, but this was actually something I experienced back when I listened to my first audiobook, the Higehiro one, where I first blindfolded myself and I was at my computer. If you remember, it was like 40 minutes ago now that I talked about that, but yeah. So when I did that, I left one part of the story out. So there was one time I was listening to it, I think for like 2 hours straight. And 2 hours straight of like that level of listening and focus is like crazy. So I was like really into it. And to give background, this is gonna seem unrelated at first, but to give background, on my phone, I have a playlist of about 1,000 Japanese anime songs or so, or songs that appeared in anime. And I've had this playlist for about 6 years now. 5 years, 6 years, several years. Okay. And I've listened to every song in there several times, multiple times, right? This is like my go-to playlist, right? And to put it frankly, like I couldn't understand any of the lyrics, right? I think my brain like naturally just like was like ignoring spoken Japanese, because up until that point I hadn't studied it. So anyway, I took a break from listening after my 2 hours or whatever, and I put my headphones in, I went to the bathroom and like just go do stuff around the house, like clean and whatever, take a break. And I remember I had my headphones in. I remember being right over there. I was taking a piss in the bathroom, of course. I'm pointing to the bathroom, just to be clear. I remember taking a piss and listening to a song I've listened to 1,000 times, inevitably, and it felt like so to be clear, I could understand, I could make out everything they were saying and understand it, and not only that, but it felt like I couldn't not understand it even if I tried. Kind of similar to like if you show me the kanji for nickel, like I would know it's cat. Show me like watashi, it's like I can't not understand it. Maybe like a beginner who like just learned the particles, but oh, like this, or not particles, the radicals. Like, oh, this plus the pine thing. It's like, is it watashi? Yeah, it's like okay, but no, it was like instant, and it was weird. It was weird because I'd probably listened to that song the week before, couldn't understand it, but now it was like I wasn't even focused on it. I was just pissing, and I was like, oh my god, I can understand this. And so like that tuned me into the fact that it wasn't just a knowledge issue, it was partially a focus issue. It's like my brain had gotten used to tuning out Japanese, and also it became apparently increasingly apparent that like if I listened to a lot of Japanese, like temporarily my my listening ability would be heightened, right? So anyway, why is that relevant? So fast forward back to present day, or at least where I was at in the story, right? We're like about a year in, right? I talked with a buddy, and this buddy he's my senpai when it comes to Japanese. He's much better than me, especially at the time he was. Even now he still is, and he was a similar hardcore learner like me, and I had a lot of questions about listening. Right? I want to know how do I get better, yada yada yada. And I asked him about his opinions on all sorts of stuff. And so this guy was like, he basically recounted what he did. And one thing that stuck out to me, I mean, there's a couple things like that I took away, like repeated listening and whatnot, listening to the same thing over and over and over. But more specifically, one thing that really stuck out to me was his opinions on passive listening. So essentially how he felt about passive listening was that it was useful not only as a way to get repeated listening of something, but also as a way to stop yourself from thinking in English. It was like a jamming signal to thinking in English, right? And I found this interesting because I was interested in the idea. And the reason why I was so interested in the idea is that I've kind of kept it a secret up until now. But right before this, around this time, I said I was listening to Zatsudan speaking streams, right? Whoops, my phone fell. Anyway, I'll get back to what I was saying. I had been listening to Zatsudan streams at this time, and more specifically, I would often listen to them before bed. And I noticed sometimes that I would listen to something before bed, and it would, when I listened to something before bed, there was a chance that I would dream in Japanese. There's a heightened chance I would dream in Japanese. Say maybe 50%, 60%. And when I would dream in Japanese and listen to Japanese before bed, I would wake up the next day and I felt like my speaking was better. Okay. I felt like the listening was better as well. I call this being in the zone, right? I was in the zone. And, yeah, like, what was I going to say? But yeah, so I mean, I would wake up and, I mentioned earlier my method of speaking was essentially I would wait for stuff to bubble up to the surface. I wasn't translating stuff in my head. It was that I was kind of just like there's like a voice in my head that would just tell me kind of the next thing to say. And that voice became significantly louder and quicker whenever I was in this Japanese like zone, right? And what this senpai told me was that in his experience, passive listening was a way to kind of keep English thoughts out and stay in like this zone basically. And I heard that and I was like, oh my god, like that's very in line with my own experience. And he mentioned being able to stay in the flow for like weeks, but for me it was like I noticed it was like a day. Like if I would stop and go speak English for like an hour, I was out of it. Right, I would be out of it. But like if I could maintain a Japanese environment, sorry, I got hiccups. If I could maintain a Japanese environment, yeah, I could stay in it for like, I mean, a day at a time, but prolonged over several days, like was a different possibility. It's 100% possible. I was like, okay, let me try this, and I mean, long story short, it worked. Like, it worked significantly well. Like I would I had like an internal term I coined. It was like a heightened state. I call it being Japanese mode as well. But like just yeah, it was like it was what I was looking for in terms of having things become significantly easier when I would speak. Like it would be so much less effort. I felt like things were quicker, and I my output, the resultant output was better and more natural. I would also have less tendency to like run myself into walls with English style speaking because my thought process would be more Japanese, if that makes sense. Like not like value wise. I'm not saying I became like indoctrinated in their society or anything, but like the way I would want to express myself would naturally come out in Japanese ways. Which is good when you're speaking Japanese, right? Because then you don't run yourself in any grammatical walls, right? Like, I don't know if you've spoken, you've probably had an experience where you go to express a thought and you start off a sentence in a certain way, but you realize partway through that since you started the sentence in a certain way, it's like you can't actually properly express your thought because the thing that you needed to say first, you skipped over, right? Because in English, you would say that thing last, but in Japanese, you have to say it first. Or more naturally, you say it first, but you're halfway through the sentence now, and it's like too late. So yes, I mean this was something that continued for like I would do this like for a long time, but I think one of like the moments that remains in my memory the most is when I was in the shower. And I remember thinking about something. I remember having like it was like a conversation in my head, which we all do, right? Um, but this conversation, I remember thinking about the thing in Japanese, and I remember an instant where like I was like aware. I was like, wait, I'm thinking about this thing in Japanese, like, and I remember thinking like maybe let's switch over to English. And I remember for like a second, like I was thinking how to express it in English, the thought I was having in English, and it didn't come to me. Like I say it didn't come to me, like it was like a couple seconds, right? Which is a long time in terms of like thinking about how to say something and like not being able to remember. And I was like, wait a minute, like let's not think about the English. Let's just stick with Japanese and just go, because like it's just like, maybe it's just easier to just continue with the Japanese. And so I kept thinking about the thing in Japanese. Um, and so, yeah. this, yeah, I mean, so that was my experience, right? So like, I felt like the Japanese mode was a way. It was like the pivotal part of my listening because it was the moment I realized that my ability in Japanese was not only hindered by my lack of knowledge in Japanese, but also my tendency to rely on my English knowledge, if that makes sense. Hopefully, I'm phrasing that in an easy to understand way. Essentially, my lack of Japanese was not the only barrier. English itself was also a barrier to me when it came to outputting good Japanese, right? Because I realized when I removed English from the equation, I got significantly better, right? And the flip side of this is, I guess, to skip ahead. I mean, and talk about something that happened a couple months ago. I mean, we had like a drinking party, right? And before the drinking, I mean, I talk with my coworkers for hours, and I've had these before, and I know how much you talk, and it's like constant people group speaking. It's like very very high level. I think group conversation, native conversations, are like the hardest, right? And it's like I want to be present in all those conversations and like be able to contribute. I was like, okay, let's get in Japanese mode, yada yada yada, and like completely like remove English. And then I went to the nomikai and spoke for a few hours. It went great. Um, After that, I called my mom to talk about something because I was going to be coming home to America. And I remember calling my mom to talk to her. And this isn't the first time this happened, by the way, but like there was significant difficulty expressing myself in English compared to before. It's like oftentimes I would forget words, which happens every now and then. It's happened maybe like twice this video already. And sometimes it's not even forgetting. It's just like I'm used to expressing a word in English, like or in Japanese, like uchiawase. Like, I mean, you always say uchiawase, like, at work, right? Even if you're talking with, actually maybe not. I was gonna say even if you're talking with other ALTs or something, you would, but maybe so it depends on the person. But like senpai as well, like it's like some of these words people just use. But there's also legitimate times where I have trouble remembering the English. And those, I mean, it happens to everyone, right? But the frequency at which that would happen would increase significantly after getting into Japanese mode. I remember talking to my buddies to give one more random side story, and I was on a call with them, and I think I was trying to explain like shichimi or something. I was trying to explain some Japanese seasoning. Seasoning was the word I was looking for, and I couldn't recall the English word for seasoning, like on a food. And I remember saying like food sand, like it's like a sand it's like sand texture that you put on food. And my buddies were like, "What the hell are you talking about?" They thought I was crazy. Until one of them finally said, "Like, are you talking about seasoning?" I was like, "Oh my god, yeah, that's it. Thank you." But like, stuff like that. But yeah, so Japanese mode. Hearing the voice in my head, yeah, was super super important. And there was like a period where I got like a passive listening playlist on my phone for like a bunch of Zatsudan videos I had watched. Yeah, I would just play them on repeat. Like I think I got rid of my music on my phone, and basically in its place I would listen to passive listening. And now I know what your immediate reaction is going to be to that, or some people. You're going to think, "Oh my god, that sounds terrible. I couldn't give up my music. Oh my god." Yeah, I mean, yeah. At the start, honestly, I did kind of miss my music. I say start, I mean like first day or two. Honestly, and I think this applies to a lot of things. I think once you start doing it and it becomes the norm, it doesn't really weigh on your mind anymore. Remember, past the third day, I didn't really care anymore. And often, like, because I was repeatedly listening to the same thing. And keep in mind, I'm the guy that I refuse to rewatch anime. I don't like re-listening to stuff or rewatching stuff. But again, you make it the norm. You just tell yourself you're going to do it, and you make it a habit. I remember, like, there were certain parts in the Zatsudan I was listening to that were, like, really, really funny. That I really, really liked. And it would always be, like, exciting to, like listen to those parts and like, oh, it's coming, it's the part that's coming. And yeah, honestly, I ended up liking it. I think it's just, yeah, like once it becomes normal, like once you like get the act of like putting your earphones in and just pressing play, yeah, I mean then you're done, right? Because then after that point, it's like you don't really think too much about listening, because it's like you can ignore it, it's fine. Because the point is like you won't be able to ignore it. Like, at least if you're at a decent level. And maybe if you're really at a low level, you can. But like for me, it was like if I had the volume high enough, it was like my brain felt like it had to listen, and it jammed all of my English thoughts out because it was like really hard to think in English while listening in Japanese. So, yeah. God, this is gonna be a long video. We're already like over an hour in. So yeah, so this is where I was at that point. And so, other than that, it's worth noting at an earlier point in my journey, I had also learned a bit of pitch. You know, I heard people like Matt versus Japan talk about it, and I had heard how important it was for natives. So like, okay, like let's like look into it. Let's see what it was. And I learned basic pitch action patterns. I learned like the patterns like atamadaka, odaka, whatever. And there's like 4 of them basically. And I learned pitch action patterns for how verbs work. Adjectives, particles like made, desho, whatever, like to, wa, like niwa, or whatever. But that different tendencies for like in these types of words, this is where the drop usually is. So like a very typical example is like people always know with like 4 more kanji compounds is usually heiban. I would learn stuff like, depending on the suffix, the pitch action is like determined basically like teki, like what kanjo teki would be like, heiban. Anything with teki at the end is going to be heiban. Shogeki teki, like that kind of stuff. What else? And like certain loan words of this length are going to be this, like that sort of stuff, like general pitch and stuff, right? A lot more than the average learner would learn, but like it's still surface level stuff. So I learned that at the start when I first moved to Japan, but I hadn't gone into it much. I'd also done like a little bit of practice on kotsu.io. And my thought process was like, I'm gonna practice listening a ton. So I might as well get like plant the seeds of pitch accent, and then since I'll be practicing listening anyway, so like I just have to listen for pitch accent, easy peasy. And it's like Ketsuron kara yuto, that did not go as planned. I mean, yeah. I mean, my pitch still sucked. I told you my girlfriend said that was like my biggest issue with Japanese. I mean, my pitch still kind of sucks. But yeah, I was at the time so when I planted the seeds though, what you have to understand is like I was doing it on kotsu.io. I couldn't, even on the minimal pairs test, which is like a pair. It's like there's like a single word and there's like two different pitches it can have. It reads out one to you and you say which one it is. I couldn't get 100% on that. Right? And my thought process was like, oh, 90%, that's an A. Whatever. And I realized, like, wait a minute. Wait a minute. This is a Japanese like voice actor speaking into a mic clearly and slowly when I know that it's already going to be one of these options in this highly controlled environment, and I still can't get 100%. So what is it going to be like when I'm listening to an actual native? Like, no shit, I can't hear it very well. Like, if you can't get 100% in a highly controlled environment, like you're not even like standing at the start line, right? So I was like, okay, like maybe I like was a bit too like, what do you say, like chutohampa, like I didn't really like I should have followed through a bit better on the like the minimal pairs practicing. And so I went back, and this time I was like, okay, I'm gonna get not only am I gonna get 100% on minimal pairs, but I'm also gonna be able to do the sentence level ones, right? Because before I got like I couldn't do any of the sentence level problems. Whereas like it reads out an entire sentence, and you have to mark the pitch for like the entire sentence. Like there's a drop here, 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 here. There's a drop here. I don't think I've ever gotten one of those correct, right? And by the way, when I say correct, I mean like the whole sentence has to be correct. And so I remember I did that. I practiced that, and I got to where I could really, really hear the minimal pairs. And I could hear it like a lot better. And I remember getting to the point where it was like, it felt a lot more obvious, like which one was being said. And I mean, once you get to 100%, that's like, okay, now you can say that you can hear pitch, right? Because in a controlled environment, you are actually able to get it right. And I remember I went to the sentence one, and I got like several right in a row, and it was like a huge like surprise. Like I couldn't get a single one before, and now I was able to get like multiple correct in a row. And the sentence ones, by the way, they're taken from like anime or drama, by the way. So yeah, and then I went back to reading. And like I was reading a visual novel. That's what it was. I was reading a visual novel. I was reading Giniro Haruka, I believe. And because you know it's voiced, so I can like listen to it. And I remember hearing the pitch for certain things like ryoribu. Like I was like, because ryori is like atamadaka, but it's like ryoribu is suddenly now it's what do you say, nakadaka, right? I was like, wait, what? Like she didn't say ryori, she said ryori. I was like, wait, is that right? So that means that if you put boot at the end, because I knew how suffixes work, I was like, wait, if you put boot at the end, that means it like, because I understood how the suffix, like, so there's suffixes that put the drop right before the suffix. So I'm like, oh, boot is one of those. So then, like, dikabu would be just like eigobu, sakabu would be like all the pitches for those, like, so, like we say, relatively speak, like, or relatively. I don't know if that's the right word. Anyway, I was like, oh, like so, like the bu suffix is like this. Like, wow, that's so cool. Cause like that was what I was wanting to do the whole time, right? It was while I would listen, I would be able to hear stuff. And it wasn't until I actually got to 100% on the minimal pairs and like actually able to do sentence level stuff that actually became like possible, right? So yeah, there were other things that like really surprised me, like kureru was like shite kureru, like to like receive, like it means to give, but it's like usually it's in the direction of you being the one receiving it. Um, I was really surprised that that was Hebang, which is the flat one, by the way, if you didn't know. And like, but it's like it's a word I've probably heard a million times. So it's like, wow, like there's so many words I didn't know. I thought I did know, but it's like I actually like completely had the pitch wrong. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of stuff like that. So I'd also like I would read through the visual novel and also like be like, okay, like can I get the pitch for this sentence correct, like 100% correct, just reading through and like imagining what the pitch should be. This is a good way to test myself. And then also, last but not least, so I'd broken up. This is like a year later now. I'm like skipping quite ahead, but I mean, like during that prior period, a lot of it was just me listening to Zatsudan after Zatsudan, bro. Anyway, so I'd broken up with my last girlfriend. I got a new girlfriend, and we I say that like I was getting into it, but like after some period had passed, I ended up dating another female who ended up being of the Japanese variety, and we texted a lot. Like I mean, she was still a student. She was going to school to become an acupuncturist, so like I guess she also had more free time compared to my ex. But like we would always message online. And so I had a ton of like messages from me and from her, right? But like most importantly from me, right? And like so I had essentially a collection of data for like the Japanese words that I use the most. And so what my thought process was like, okay, we have a collection of all the words I use. Let's just learn the pitch for those, right? Because those are the words I'm using. Like that, like my speech patterns and the things that are relevant to me in my day-to-day life are like embedded in the data, right? So I put it through a Japanese text analysis tool, which you can find online if you want. And I made like a kotoba deck on like the Discord bot with all of my all the words from my messages. I think maybe I included hers as well. All the words from our messages in frequency order, and then their pitch as well. Just went through and studied those. And it's surprisingly easy to memorize. I don't know, something about like the pitch of a word. Once you remember like this is the one that sounds right, and you hear it, you can accurately perceive it. It's like anything else kind of sounds wacky. So it wasn't too hard to learn, and like surprisingly very like fast improvement. So like just learning like a couple hundred words that are the most common ones that you use offers like a lot of improvement. Like I remember it was pretty early on that I was able to start writing like entire sentences that I knew like exactly what the pitch should be, right? And I mean that also goes for like grammar, right? Because like grammar like pitch rules are very very consistent actually. It makes a lot of sense. It's not, and unlike in the regular language where it's like usually learning one thing means that you learn one thing. Sometimes like learning one thing in pitch enables you to like do a whole bunch of stuff. Because there's like consistent patterns for like suffixes, prefixes, for like verb intransitive and transitive pairs. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Like what more the pitch drop can and can't be on. It's like, so if you know kind of the vibe for pitch, like how it works, it felt a lot easier to like pick up on. I mean, there's still a frick ton to learn and then apply it to your own Japanese, but like It's not as scary as I think some people think it is. Um, so yeah, I think I skipped quite a bit ahead, but like that's kind of what I did. I mean, for the longest time, I mean my listening practice would basically just be me listening to Zats down. I like other stuff. Like I've listened to probably like I'd be surprised it's in the hundreds now of videos like that. Um, ton of listening. Some audiobooks every now and then, not really. Um, Mostly just listening to Zatsudan and like raising the difficulty as I go. Um, and I'll jump into general reflections and stuff. There's a few things I want to talk about, much to the dismay of some listeners, I'm sure. It's quite a long video, I apologize. Before that, I'm going to go to the bathroom again one last time, and yeah, I'll be back. And thanks to the magic of editing, I am now back. So yeah, it might come as a surprise to some people, but yeah, like a lot of my Japanese listening improvement past that point to get to where I was now was just like watching YouTube videos and trying to understand and like looking stuff up when I didn't understand it, trying my best to understand, and maybe some Netflix here and there. But primarily, essentially, what I did was reading minus the SRS, right? Just attempting to do the thing, pushing myself, and then inevitably failing on some parts. If you don't fail a little bit, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And repeating. And yeah, and it's worth noting in this period, I mean, there were a few things I did on the side that took my attention away. I had about a year where I was thinking about programming like as a side or like as my job after Jet. And I'd programmed in the past, so I was like relearning programming in Python and all that stuff. And I even made like an AI, like a convolutional neural network that could read calligraphy and stuff. And what you would call it. I also like have gotten into other stuff like investing this past year. So, you know, but even despite that, I tried to consistently put in at least like 2 or 3 hours a day of dedicated practice. Then you have to also put on top of that, you know, how much time I spend speaking at work and doing that. I'll get into that a bit in a second in my reflection. I can't discount that, but I mean, one is more important than the other, is what I'll say. But anyway, so yeah, like I'll get into general reflection, like my experience listening, whatnot. So it's worth noting that whenever I started out, I had significant issues hearing the phonemes as well, which really surprised me. Like the sounds, like there would be times where how would I say this? Like there would be times where I was listening to something and I like couldn't even accurately transcribe what I was listening to. But then what would always surprise me is that I would often put on Japanese auto-generated subtitles on YouTube, and they're auto-generated, right? So they just listen to it and like produce it, and they would be correct. And it was like I was like so clearly it's perceivable, even especially to like natives. Someone just sent me a message on Discord. Perceivable to natives, and I was lost. And in addition, like when I would try recalling stuff, there would be like times where I'd often recall the words that, like the mora in the wrong order. So like if I heard something and I tried to repeat it back, I would like have some mora flipped, right? And unrelated, I think, but in a similar vein, when I was speaking, sometimes I would even flip the kanji. So like when I say I'm speaking, I mean I would flip the readings of the kanji because I would remember, oh, this word uses these kanji, like it has this plus this, um, and but like in order to read them, I didn't have to remember the order, right? Because they're already in the right order. All I have to remember is which one is which reading, and so it's like if they're both the basic onyomi that you would expect, there's really nothing to remember. It's like, oh, this word is read how you would expect, and I just read it in that order. But that's a no-go whenever you're speaking, right? Because you actually have to remember the order. One funny thing that came up when I was speaking with my girlfriend was menseki and sekimen. Uh, I wanted to say menseki. Is it menseki? Menseki. Menseki. Whatever. And I said sekimen, which means like to like blush or whatever, like have like red face. And I realized right after I said it, I was like, wait a minute. Um, so it happens. But anyway, yeah, so I had a lot of trouble listening and hearing, and like even just hearing what they were saying, like not even processing it, just like understanding what actual sounds were said in the first place. And I realized like part of that is cleared up with your ability to like understand general spoken Japanese in English. Like if you know the words that you're like expecting to hear in like this slot, it kind of clears itself up. Like there's actual interesting studies on this. But like when we are processing auditory information, we're not actually just processing the auditory information. I mean, context plays a role. I mean, different candidates for words can go in a spot plays a role. Like we're constantly like we're filling the gaps automatically with our own listening ability, our own language ability. And I didn't have that at the start. I still like lack it to some extent. And yeah, I mean, it made things significantly more difficult. And that it cleared itself up naturally for the most part. I still do have issues with listening. Like if I feel like if something's too quiet, I have trouble hearing it. More so than I would in English. And honestly, I think pitch helps a lot with that because pitch is a lot more perceivable even at low volumes. I've demonstrated this before too on like muffled audio. It's really easy to hear out pitch when other like information is lost, like the specific more that they're saying. The general like shape of the word is a lot more. It remains a lot more apparent even at lower volumes and more muffled. What do you say? Like levels. And so if you're able to use that as a context hint, that is very helpful. What else? It can also be an issue if you're the one speaking and you mess up pitch because it's harder for the listener to understand if they don't hear the more that you're saying properly. But if you mumble something but you say it in the correct pitch, there's a chance that they understand it right. So yeah, that's a whole thing. Pitch. I mean, yeah, it's important. I mean, I guess I wasn't really planning on talking about it too much in this video, but I mean, pitch has like become like a or it's not conservation, but controversial. That's the word. Controversial. God, my English sucks now. A controversial topic in the Japanese language learner community. I think the primary reason is obvious, right? It's like Mappers Japan, right? Who's like borderline, like he's like kind of engaging in like shady practices and like I think general influencers like jump on the bandwagon of like they need to say something that other people aren't saying so they have content, right? Like you have to say something and have like, this is the thing that all Japanese learners are missing. Like, it's like you need clicks. So people other than Matt obviously like hopped on and been like, yada yada yada, pitches this, pitches that. I mean, if you're able to separate your opinion of those people from your opinion of pitch, I don't think there's anyone who actually knows what pitch is, can accurately perceive it, and regularly use it themselves and like in their interpretation of spoken Japanese, and not think that it's important. Like, it's important, right? The question is like, the problem is that there's other important shit, right? And really what it boils down to is like, okay, there's a lot of important stuff and you have a limited amount of time. How should new learners spend their time, right? Right? And like, once you're finally able to acknowledge that, I think you're able to finally stand at the start line of like the conversation, right? Because if you just think that pitch isn't important, like, my first reaction is you just don't understand what pitch is. Like, you probably think you do, but you don't. And but like, it's possible for something to be important and like very central to the language itself, but not a deal breaker. And so, okay, maybe if a newer learner has a limited amount of time and resource, they should spend their time on other stuff. Like, I think that's the correct way to think about pitch. And my personal opinion is like, I don't know. I don't know where I fall on the issue, honestly. I think it doesn't matter too much, because I think that, again, there's so much important stuff if you want to become a good Japanese speaker, that it's like most people aren't going to get to that level in the first place. Like, this is a lot to learn. There's a ton to learn. Even I'm not there yet. Like, honestly, there's still a lot of stuff I can improve on. And you know, so I think it's important that we acknowledge the stuff that really isn't important. Like, I mean, like there's a ton of like vocabulary and stuff that I'm a big stickler on people learning like dumb vocabulary. It's like learn vocabulary that's relevant to you, right? Be able to at least process audio. Another big one that like people sometimes mistake the importance of at the beginning is like vowel length. Vowel length is very important. Please learn the correct vowel lengths. But like, I don't know. Like, I went the first 4 years of learning Japanese without ever speaking or listening, right? Obviously those are important skills, but I still didn't do that for the first 6,000 hours of my study, right? So I guess I come at it with a different perspective of something can be important and you can choose not to do it. Like, that's okay. There's a lot of things that are important to the language, and so it's just a matter of which one gives you the best return on your time. I think pitch, in my opinion, relieves a large burden of listening off of the listener. It takes a big burden off of them in terms of like listening and being able to process what you're saying. So if you want to go that route and you want to sound more natural, like I personally don't like the way accents sound, some accents, like specifically Japanese into English, and English into Japanese, honestly, as well. And so in order for me to sound like, I don't know, like sound in a way that I'm not like embarrassed about, not embarrassed, but like it doesn't, for my own Japanese to not sound grating to my ears, like, you know, it's something I do want to improve on. I've been a bit lazy about it, but but yeah, I mean, it's just like, I don't know. Think about it for yourself. My only suggestion would be that you don't listen to people who can't aren't good at pitch who say that's not important. It is important. It's just like, yeah, like I said, there's a lot of stuff that's important. For me, for the first 4 years of my journey, like that was just reading. So like I said, no listening, no speaking, no pitch, no writing. Can't write. Is writing important? I mean, yeah. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't say it is. It's just like, is it important for you? Um, and that is answerable by one very simple question: do you plan on writing? I mean, like for some people they do, and it's like it's an important aspect of the hobby for them. For other people, it's not. But like, you know, it's very hard to say that writing in Japanese is not important. Like, there's a reason every Japanese person can do it. Oh, but Japanese people forget one or so kanji every now and then. They can write kanji. They can write hiragana. I've seen it with my eyes. They'll tell you different. Oh, we forget kanji. Oh my god, no. And we forget how to spell sometimes too in English. But if you find a native who can't spell, it'll shape your opinion of them, right? I mean, so I guess, yeah. I mean, calling something important versus not important, it's like, I don't know. I think you're arguing about the wrong thing. I guess, so, like, acknowledge that everything has its uses, and everything exists for a reason. Like, it's not a vestige of the language that just like remains after some time. And I don't want to make this a pitch video, but there's also common arguments about, oh, but pitch is different depending on where you are living in. So then it doesn't matter because if you're like, there is no correct pitch. I guess and first of all, that's a ridiculous claim, but if you speak Hyojungo, like, then if your pitch isn't Hyojungo, then it's like, it's wrong, right? Like, it would be very weird to hear a Japanese person who said one word with like a Chinese accent, one word with an American accent, one word with a British accent, and then one word with like Australian accent, all in the same sentence. Like, oh, but no, this word is correct if you go to England. Like, okay, are you speaking like Britain form of like English, or are you speaking like, which one are you speaking? Like, there has to be like consistency here, or else it's like not right? Like, you know. And so yeah, but again, it's not a prerequisite to be understood. It's not a prerequisite to be able to listen. So it's like, you can neglect it and be fine, depending on what level you want to get to, obviously. But whether or not you want to neglect it, I would leave that up to you. I would just try to make as informed of a decision as possible. And at least if you're gonna not do something, at least do it aware of what it is you're missing out on, right? You want to make an accurate assessment of opportunity cost. So like, if I choose to do it, what am I getting? What am I losing out on in terms of time and my resources? If I don't do it, then what am I missing out on? Like, what do I gain, right? And where else can I focus my attention? Just make an educated decision. And I don't think, like, there's no wrong decision. The only thing I'll say is, like, getting to 100% accuracy on kotsu and stuff wasn't that hard, honestly. It like took just a few days. It was, I mean, a few days of like dedicated practice, but like, and after that, it did feel like a lot of it, like, when I listened for it, it would reveal itself to me, the correct pitch. So, I mean, that's something to consider as well. Maybe just do a little bit, be aware of it, and see where it takes you. Did not mean to talk that long about pitch. Oh my god. But yeah, and then so, again, on speaking, So like there's another issue I ran into that was essentially I would often speak with people and like they would like the flow of conversation was like nonsensical to me. Like like it was very clear that the like like when I was listening to two Japanese people speak, right, in like Zatsudan or something, it would be clear that like one person was talking about something that I didn't know what they were talking about. The other person would somehow know what they were talking about and like be responding to that in like vague ways, right? Which are like Japanese people, they admit everything, they just use like one word. Um, and I would be like, what the hell? Like, what are they talking about? Like, clearly they understand each other. They're having a conversation, but like I couldn't understand like what it was they're actually talking about, which is weird, right? And so, like this was an issue. Um, it for the most part resolved itself on its own. Um, but yeah, I mean, it took a lot of getting used to. There was like a lot of verbs as well, where it was like when you know what, like when this verb is used in this sentence, like for example, like menkyo toru, like toru for like licenses, right? And then like so you might be having a conversation as a car about as a car, no, about a car or like driving, and then if they just say like totteru, it's like implied that the totteru is like talking about your license, right? Um, and then it's like, for example, like if I'm talking with my students about their homework, and I say dashita, it's like it's implied that I'm talking about their homework, like did you turn it in? But it's like to a learner who's not aware that shukudai is something that you dasu. If they maybe they're only familiar with like teishitsu, right? If you're only from like um, if you don't know the verb that is used with certain nouns, then you might be like in trouble, right? Or like counters, for example. Um, for example, like toru can mean like a lot of things, right? But if I say oh ichimai toreta, right, and like you might not know like what I'm talking about, but some learners might know that, or like if I say oh like ii ichimai toreta yo, like it's like oh maybe he's talking about pictures, right? Because ichimai is the counter for pictures, and then like toru is the verb for pictures, right? So like understanding like those two things in combination is the key, right? So I didn't say like a shashin o ichimai toreta, like screw saying the whole sentence in Japanese, right? Like screw you if you think that's acceptable, right? No, you have to admit as much information as possible. So so being able to like extract all the information from what remains is important, right? Because Japanese people are doing it, right? And that's what they're accounting for in their speech is like how much can I admit and a Japanese person would still understand. And sometimes they still overdo it. Um, but yeah, so it's that's the important part is like having a strong foundation for not even foundation but strong pool of knowledge for not only what do words mean, but when are certain words and nouns used in the language, right? Um, namely, like verbs is a big one. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, like there's a lot like verbs, especially, and that just takes exposure, and you get better. There's actually, funny enough, this was something I got praised on last month, maybe I wouldn't want to say. I was talking. We were in the staff room, and like the vice principal was there. The I said a Kilmu, but like the person who like teaches like science and like does other stuff was there. um, and we were talking, and he said, the science teacher guy said, he was like, like you're like Japanese is like really, it's like uncommon that there's a foreigner as good as you. Kind of like jerking myself indirectly by just quoting him, but I was like, oh, like thank you. But then he followed up. He's like, I don't even mean that though. Like how good your speaking is. He's like, he's like, it's noticeable because you understand like what we're trying to say, you know. And he did like the thing. I was like, oh yeah, I know what you mean, because I knew he was referring to the whole like sasuru, like guessing what the other person said. Like I don't know if maybe some people listening aren't familiar, but like it's the idea of like guessing at what the speaker is trying to say, so they don't have to say the whole thing. I knew that's what he was referring to, so I was like, oh yeah, like so that like partway through, so he didn't actually finish his thought, and he said like yeah, like look, you like see like exactly what you just did. um, and like yeah, I mean that's another part of the language, right? um, because if you're listening to native content, it's like that's the norm, right? If it's Japanese people talking to other Japanese people, that's going to be a common phenomenon, right? Is where they don't say the whole thing. It's kind of like jail, like guess, um, and yeah, I mean it just takes getting used to. It's not over, like it's not some hurdle that you can't get over. Um, but it is interesting that I felt that way. Like there was like some things where it's like when I first started learning, I was like, how the hell do they know what they're talking about? Um, but I've experienced the opposite phenomenon for looking at people answering reading questions, like online, sometimes on WaniKani, other forms as well. But like people will post a sentence and be like, "What does this mean?" Like I need help with this word or something. And sometimes a reply will be, "We need more context. We don't like. I don't know. We need more context. It's ambiguous." But I'll read the sentence. I'm like, it's not ambiguous. It's like there's only one thing they could be trying to say here. Um, but it's like it's because yeah. I mean, once you're familiar with all the patterns, it's like and you're familiar with the way Japanese people phrase stuff. Um, problems like that start to clear up, and in some weird reverse fashion, it's like that they like it might seem like they could be expressing idea A or idea B. It might seem ambiguous, but you know that if they were trying to express idea B, they know that it would be ambiguous, so like they would say this other thing to express idea B more clearly, right? Because the ambiguity is like a hint in and of itself, right? Because Japanese people speaking, like they tend to make things like guessable, right? That's like the prerequisite for like not being an idiot, is like make sure that the thing you're saying is like actually interpretable by the listener. So the fact that they said that, assuming that you could interpret it, means that like the most obvious interpretation is the correct one. Like um, there's some stuff you can find online with like technically like Japanese sentences like the what is it, like the cat with the red head ate a fish or whatever. Like it's ambiguous. It could mean all these different things, and it's like okay. I mean, I guess you can say the same about some English sentences as well, but it's like the fact that a Japanese person would say that means that they're telling you about the thing that you would most likely guess from context. Um, because if that wasn't the thing that they wanted you to understand, they would add in more information to make it the most clear interpretation, right? So usually, once you like, what I'm trying to say is for a Japanese person, the most clear interpretation, the shortest step interpretation is the correct one, right? So the closer you get to a Japanese level of understanding, like the easier it becomes, because your first interpretation is just going to be the correct one every time, right? I say every time, like 99.9% of the time, right? right? Or else like Japanese people, like society couldn't function, right? If like, and Japanese people will play it up like, oh yes, in Japanese it's like very ambiguous, but like the fact that their society hasn't crumbled to little bits and their companies haven't gone bankrupt tells you that like effective communication is taking place. Like as much as people like to shit on Japanese people and their communication style, like the fact that Japanese society is working, the fact that couples remain in relationships and they're able to communicate and have like it works. Yeah, right. It's very hard to comprehend maybe at the start or for people who aren't familiar with Japanese society, but it's a way of doing things that is viable, right? Much to the dismay of many foreigners, right? Um, but yeah, what else have I wanted to say? There's a few things before I get into my final topic. God, bless your heart if you are still listening to this from the very beginning. Lord knows I love rambling, and it's been almost 2 hours. But yeah, I guess the last thing is I'll wrap up before I get into my final topic is, one thing is that the way I learned Japanese, I noticed that it makes it very hard for me to translate things. It's like I mentioned, I wait for things to bubble to the surface, kind of. And when things bubble to the surface, I just say them. So to me, like Japanese and English are very separate in my mind, which is good, maybe. Like I said, it's very hard because when I'm thinking about things in English, it's very hard to switch over to Japanese. Like I have Japanese mode and English mode. It's like it's hard to transition cleanly between the two. It's called like what, code switching or whatever. So people who are like interpreters, I imagine, are particularly good at this, right? Like you can cleanly switch back and forth between the languages, and maybe you can express thoughts very quickly in one another, or take one thought in one language and internally translate it to another. I suck at this. It's very, very difficult for me to actually translate stuff. And yeah, like oftentimes I'm asked, how do you say this in Japanese? And it's like, my first thought is always like, I wouldn't say that in Japanese. Like, it's like, I guess you wouldn't say that, but it's like, oh, but we can say this other thing that gets across the same idea. But, yeah. So I guess if you want to be a translator, I imagine even after you get to this level, there will be a significant training period to where you're actually good at translating, right? I always assume that if you could get to the level I'm at nowadays, it'd be like translating would be a second nature, right? Because obviously, you understand what this language means, you understand what this language is. Just like translate it, bro. Just put one into the other. But it's surprisingly just not that simple. Yeah. Okay. So, okay. My final thing I want to talk about today. Maybe the most important in the whole video. It's not specifically about learning Japanese, listening, or speaking. Which, by the way, I never said for speaking, by the way. When I wrote out those diaries, which immensely helped me, by the way, that was like #1 help for my speaking, was just writing out what I tried to say. I would often go back and verbalize, like I would read back out spoken. But yeah, I mean, so my final topic isn't actually about specifically learning to read or speak, or listen or speak. It's more about general skill building. And yeah, general stuff in general. General stuff in general. Look at me go. I'm really stringing together words today. So yeah, to preface this, I did start learning to draw 4 months ago now, I believe 4 months ago. And that's been like a big endeavor that I started on with no prior experience, mind you. And ever since 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I've been really interested in just the idea of like learning stuff. Um, I mean, there's stuff I learned when I was younger, and a lot of it like games, for example. Like if you know Counter Strike, I got to like global elite or whatever. Um, I was like, I'm good at games in general. And But yeah, so it's like I was always really interested. Like for the past few years, I've been interested in like the idea of like learning stuff, getting good at stuff. Uh, and There's been a book I read. I've read a couple times. I could reread it, called Peak: The New Science on Expertise, and just the general idea of efficient learning, right? Yeah, efficient learning. If you want to get better at something, how do you do it? How do you do it well? Um, and I'll tell you, like, when it came to speaking and listening, I mean, these concepts 100% applied. But I think the most important concept to understand, if you want to get to a really high level in Japanese or anything else, is that like just doing it isn't enough. If like there's a very very good reason why people can play the same game for 10 years and be average or below average. There's a good reason why people can come to Japan for 10 years and live here and interact with people in Japanese daily and not be N1 after 10 years. Or not even be N2 sometimes, not even N3 sometimes. There's a very, very good reason why people can play baseball for like their entire young adult lives, and they're not very good. They have no chances of going pro. Um, so like, it's like the issue is like, especially as adults, I think we have a tendency to want to stay in our comfort zone. Right, so like let me tie this back to earlier. Um, when I was learning to output, for example, I told you in my Jiko Shokai, like I had trouble even expressing where the frick I came from, like Missouri. Like I'm from Doko Doko, you know. I had trouble when I started listening. I told you I couldn't even like understand the first anime I watched, like Wotakoi. Um, it like gave me so much issue. And as adults, I don't feel like we're honestly put in too many situations where we feel stupid, you know. I don't feel like we're put in too many situations where we're like we just like are doing poorly, you know. If you take classes, typically classes are taken, they're approached in such a way that there's like learning and then there's like homework. Like there's very very few homework ever assigned where it's like you should get like a 30% on it, right? It's usually understood that if you're doing the homework, like you've learned the content, right? You should be able to do it. Tests are a similar way. The idea of a good test is something that covers content that you've already learned, right? And so exposure to new content, exposure to new learning, new material is often taking place like in a very very controlled environment, right? Where it's like someone's introducing it to you and explaining it to you, yada yada yada. But if you do what I do and you try to learn by yourself, like if you try to teach yourself, autodidact or whatever they call it, and you want to do it efficiently, I mean, the feed like the core principle is like a deliberate practice loop, right? Like you need to do the thing that you can't do that you want to be able to do. You need to do the thing, and then you need to suck at it, right? Because the important thing is like not that you suck at it. That's the prerequisite. The prerequisite is that once you suck at it, you are able to look at what it is you suck at, and you're able to look at what it is you want to be able to do, what the correct answer is, and what your answer was, and like you need to be able to like analyze that and then just move 1 inch closer, or 1 centimeter closer if you don't live in America, right? And that's the loop, right? So like when I had to learn to read Japanese, you know, the loop was I crack open a visual novel at the start, or a light novel, whatever, and I tried to understand a sentence, and inevitably I usually couldn't. In fact, it would be an issue if I could, because that means that there was nothing to learn, right? In that case, you would just go to the next sentence. But anyway, you inevitably run into something you don't understand. But that's the point, because the point is now, look, you have something you can learn that you can equip your future self with that will aid you in your journey, right? And so you go look for the answer. So here's the problem, though. Okay, well, there's 2 problems. I'll tell you the general problem first. The general problem is that it can be very uncomfortable for people, right? Because it's like, it's in our nature, like when we want to do something, it's like we do it because we want to do well, right? We crack open a book often, it's like, in the back of our mind, even if we tell ourselves otherwise, it's like we want to read and understand, right? But that's like us just longing for comfort, right? Because what the real goal is, if you're trying to improve quickly, is not to see how good you are, it's to confirm how bad you are. And specifically to confirm what you're bad at. It's to find what you can improve on, right? Because, I mean, look at the alternative. The alternative is that you crack open a book, and this is something I can do now. I crack open a book, and I read through it, and I understand everything, okay? Where does that leave me? It leaves me with 0 improvement, right? Alternatively, like I said, I'm learning to draw, okay? Imagine I draw a picture, and I can find nothing wrong with the picture. I think I did great. I really put in enormous work, and I drew a picture, and it's great, right? It's a perfect picture. What does that mean? It means, 1, I didn't challenge myself enough. I didn't put myself far enough out of my comfort zone. And at the end of the day, I drew that entire picture, and I grew zip from it. Okay, it didn't grow. Okay, from a learning standpoint, that's bad. If I'm just making a picture for a friend, that's great. If I can draw something I'm super proud of, whatever. But from a learning standpoint, that is the worst outcome possible. Or actually, maybe the second one's the worst outcome possible. The second possibility is that there is something wrong with the picture, and I lack the ability to identify it. Okay, this also will stunt my growth, right? Right? This also applies to Japanese. If you can read through a Japanese sentence, right, and you cannot identify, if there's something wrong with your understanding of the sentence and you cannot identify it, that is problematic for your growth. How do you avoid that? By being very careful. I mean, that's all I can say. I mean, you will have cases where you think you understand a sentence, but you really don't. It's an inevitability. But you can reduce that as much as possible by closely looking over every piece of grammar and asking yourself, do I really understand why this grammar is there, what it's doing, what this word is doing, yada, yada, yada. And you can confirm it with Yomi-chan and stuff. And the second thing, again, applies to reading as well. If you don't push yourself far enough outside of your comfort zone, if you don't push yourself out of your comfort zone at all, you're not going to improve. Right? But we as adults especially, we love our comfort zone. So be very careful. Okay? So now here's the problem. So for listening and speaking specifically. So for listening, I mentioned earlier, it's important that you check the correct answer. And with reading, it's very apparent how you should do that. You just look it up, right? or if you have one of those things, bilingual, whatever, like sometimes you'll even have like the English translation there. You can check your comprehension. That is the idea of like checking your answer, right? With art, it would be like if you reproduce a work, right? That's how you do it. You reproduce a work, and then you go back and you look at the actual work you're trying to reproduce, and you look at yours and you find what's different. Okay, with speaking and listening, it's a bit more difficult, right? Because with speaking, you might not be able to identify what it is you don't even understand in the first place, right? Because you can listen to something, you'd be like, I have no idea what they're even saying in the first place. And the best way I've found to check is just make sure what you're listening to has subtitles. Like the first thing I listened to wasn't subtitles, it was the audiobook, right? Which had that was the first thing I really got hard into. And I had a book. It was just a book being read out loud. So like I had access to the whatchamacallit if I needed it. And then I moved over to Netflix, and I would strictly do stuff that had Japanese subtitles. Because that way then it's like you can listen. And inevitably, you want to be able to find something that you can listen to that's either like a struggle to hear, or that you like just barely can't hear it, right? And then you check. You go back, you listen to it again, because now you know what you're listening for, and you're like, okay, will I be able to get this next time? If not, okay, listen to it again. So this idea of going out of your comfort zone and constantly looking for stuff that you can improve on is very important. I mean, it's the single trait that's gotten me to where I am in Japanese, right? Every time I felt even the slightest bit comfortable with what I was reading, I upped the difficulty. Every time I felt the slightest bit comfortable with what I was listening to, I upped the difficulty. I moved from, I told you, audiobooks, so I moved to audiobooks with faster speed. Then I moved to Zatsudan. Then I moved from, so like I would change the Zatsudan, who I was listening to be more difficult as time went on. Like there was people who I graduated from because they were slower, clearer speakers, and they like would say simpler things. So I moved on to people who spoke in more difficult fashions, right? And now there's going to be people who are inevitably like, but I don't want to do that. That sounds like I want to just enjoy. That sounds stressful. I want to enjoy my time. And my first disclaimer is I enjoyed what I did. I enjoy what I do. Let me hold on one second. All right, sorry about that. Where was I at? Sorry, for you guys, it was like just a mere instant, and I lost my train of thought. For me, it was not an instant. Sorry. But okay. Anyway, for me, it was enjoyable. Okay, and I guess what I'll say is like for people who are think that kind of approach to learning is stressful. For one, I mean, just don't do it then. Okay, that's an option. I mean, there are people who, there's a reason why in any given field that there is a large variety of skill, right? I mean, clearly, people at the top, probably in some capacity, they want it more. They probably have a higher, higher propensity capacity for, or just the ability to enjoy improving or seeing themselves improve, and probably more aware of, their own improvement, yada. But I mean, not everyone's got to be good at Japanese. Not everyone's got to be good at drawing, yada. I mean, it's okay to do stuff just for fun. But like I said, this video is made for people who want to be as good as possible, and so I'm gonna say this declaratively, but like keep in mind I'm speaking strictly to people with similar goals in mind to me. I'm not saying that you need to have those goals. In fact, I think it would be a very unfortunate world if everyone had those had goals to be the best at whatever they had to do and yada yada yada. Yeah, I don't think it's necessary at all. I think it's a calling that few people have to get good at one particular thing. And if that thing happens to be maybe Japanese for you, if you're listening to this video, or something else, this might apply to you, but like, if you're not willing to get off autopilot, step outside of your comfort zone, and enjoy the pain, like, you have no chance of getting to the top, right? And it's like, I don't even say that because a single day is hard or anything, because it's not. It's like, but it's like you have to persist over years to get notably good at a lot of these skills. Like, piano is one, drawing is another. Like I said, I'm doing Japanese. Like if you, I genuinely hesitate to call myself close to native level. I don't think I am, and I've put in, God, probably close to 10,000 hours at this point. And I'm regularly told by the people at the prefectural office, the people at City Hall, that they've never met a foreigner who's has as good as Japanese as me. I'm gonna jerk myself off for a second and say it's uncommon for people to get to where I am, and there's still people who are a lot better than me. And I've met them, specifically online, right? I know they exist, and yeah, if you want to get even like, I hesitate. N1 is just like the start, honestly. If you want to get really, really good, it's like you have to be very, very willing to step outside of your comfort zone, because comfort is what will rob you of progress, right? And how do you manage to be how do you manage to be comfortable with being uncomfortable is the question. Okay, that is like I want to say maybe the single most like valuable personality. I don't know if it falls in personality, but maybe we'll say trait that you can have if you want to be really good at something. It's be comfortable with like being uncomfortable. Essentially, be comfortable with sucking. Be comfortable with like constantly having something you can improve on. Because if you want to aim for the top, it's going to be years of improving, right? And then here's the kicker. Okay, once you get there, even what original you maybe thought was there, okay, if you get there, you're still not going to be satisfied. Okay, and here's why. Okay, think about it. Okay, the people who and sorry, I'm like getting like atsuku katateru ne. This is something I'm passionate about. But the people who got to the top of their field, okay, and this is something that really drew me into the art field. Okay, illustrators, namely. Look, like it's cutthroat, man, in Japan to be an illustrator. Okay, look at the people who got there. Why did they improve so much? Because it is second nature to them to be able to find and identify flaws within their own work. Okay, same for Japanese. Why did I get here? Is because I was constantly, it's second nature to look at what can a native do and what can I not do. Compare and, okay, what's the next step I can take to get 1 inch closer, okay? That doesn't go away. You, like, it's like, it's paradoxical to think that that person should be satisfied once they get to whatever level, right? Because that level it's arbitrary, right? It's arbitrary. And if they were the type of person to be satisfied with themselves, they would have never improved that much in the first place. Does it make sense? Like, you won't improve if you're the type to chase satisfaction, okay? Because satisfaction's it's in here, right? You can be satisfied with whatever, right? Just as much, some people can be satisfied living on $30,000 a year. Some people need, they need like millions, right? At the end of the day, your ability to be content with something, it's on you, right? It's like no amount of getting stuff will ever content you, right? And I think it's funny. This person you would not think could be smart at all. Um, XQC, he's like a streamer. I remember watching a clip from. I don't watch this guy. I know about him, but I watched a clip, and he's like a super successful like rich streamer, right? He has probably way too much money for his own good. And I remember him talking about how like because he's like super ambitious, right? He would keep chasing this thing, and like once you get there though, it's like the thing that you were chasing, like the wall that you're trying to get over, it's like it ends up getting just that much further away. And like I think that's the reality for like anyone who wants to be like the best at stuff. Again, like you look at professional artists, you ask them like how good are you, how satisfied are you with your art. I think the answer you'll hear back the most is like, I still have like so and so XYZ to improve on. A VTuber that I listened to, is they were recalling a person after the live performance that was really good, one of their coworkers, and they said like they were praising him. They're like, oh man, like you did great, and the coworker was like, I messed up in like these 5 places, like these 5 places I could have sung better, I messed up. And like from the outside perspective, it's like, oh my god, like why can't they just be like content? Like they did so good, they're so good at whatever they do, like why can't they just be content? Why can't they be content? But it's like that person that you admire only exists because of their inability to be content. Okay, like the only reason people like say like Otani Shohei, for example, are so good at baseball, the only reason he can practice so much, right, and get so much better, is because he's not content, right? Like by definition, if he was content, if he thought, okay, I'm at a level I'm happy with, like the motivation to continue would not be there, right? And so it's important to like distance yourself from like the idea of my goal is to be satisfied, because it's like I don't think for a lot of people, I don't think that really is your goal. I think for the people who really want to be amazing at something, to be exceptional at something, I don't think what it is that you want is really to be satisfied. I think it's like, I think you're just drawn to that thing and like embrace it. And so what you can do is like, okay, if the end is not going to be like some grand payoff, like the most important thing to do is enjoy getting there. But wait, isn't that a contradiction? Because you're saying that you need to be uncomfortable. So how can you enjoy being uncomfortable? It's possible. Let me tell you, it's possible. So remember, like there's like a Bruce Lee quote or something, where it's like, pray not for an easy life, but pray for the strength to endure a hard one, or whatever. I think that's like, it roughly sums up what I'm trying to say. But like, even, I don't know, maybe it's just like testosterone speaking, but like, even if it is hard, I think that kind of oversells it. Like, it's possible to enjoy putting in effort, right? Anyone who's gone to the gym, not anyone maybe, but most people I think would probably have the experience of like, you go to the gym, you work up a sweat, you put in work, you work your butt off, you're like tired at the end, but there's like this sense of like, whew, like I did it. Like, man, like, ooh, that feels good. It feels good to like, to do that. I think that's what you need to cultivate. You know, don't cultivate being comfortable. Cultivate satisfaction in yourself pride in yourself after you've put in some work, you know. um, I think that's like the key. And for me, it's like people might hear how I study, and they might think, I think realistically, I don't know, it's hard to say what, like, even between computer science and all that stuff, how much I do a day. I don't know, probably like 3 to 4 hours a day. I don't know. Yeah, I'd say after like, and I work full time, just to be clear, and I work out as well. But I'll get into that in a second. But like, most of my free time goes to study. And you might hear that and be like, oh, like, he's got like a real talent for focusing, or like discipline. To be clear, I don't think I have a talent for discipline. I'll get into that in a second. I definitely don't have a talent for focusing. At least I don't think so. I'm diagnosed with ADHD, for what it's worth, and I don't take my medication anymore. So there's that. But in addition to that, like, I have days where it's like I don't want to do shit either. And like, what I can say is this one thing that has really, really, really changed the game for me is like just getting my life in order. So like, I go to bed at the same time every day, wake up at the same time every day. I get plenty of sleep. Like, I get 9 hours a night. That's the amount that I guess is good for me. I manage when I eat before bedtime. I manage what I eat. I manage. I meditate as well. I work out, which I mentioned earlier. Like, I keep physical activity. I minimize distractions in certain ways by like removing my phones from my environment. Yada yada yada. I make habits out of things. I put effort into finding content that is relevant for me, or like important to me. Because like, I went on a search for VTubers that I would enjoy, and I probably watched dozens of different VTubers, but only ended up sticking with a couple that I found after some time. But yeah, so that, and I mean, I set time aside like every day to do this stuff, and like I mentioned with like the listening thing, when I removed my music, I like like, it's hard at the start, but once you get used to it, it starts to be fun. Honestly, I went like hermit mode, I remember, for like a few weeks, like 2 years ago. And I remember, it's like I cut out all contact with everyone else around me. And I've had weekends as well where I disconnected my internet. But I don't think I did disconnect my internet at the time. But like, all contact, I was off Monte County forums as well for a few weeks. I posted about it on there, actually. And it was like no contact with anyone. Just studying, just complete immersion, 100% Japanese, 100% all the time. And like, first couple of days, like, I was like getting urges to like check Wanikani. I don't use social media anymore, by the way, outside of like, I guess, Wanikani. But after like the third day, it was great. In fact, I only planned on doing it for like 1 week. I ended up doing it for like 3 or something, because I enjoyed it so much. So, I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, like, I think there's a lot of influence that people can have over their ability to enjoy discomfort, to enjoy putting in work. Because I'll tell you, like, when I don't sleep well, or like I feel bad, it's like, it is a struggle getting myself to sit down and study. I just want to sit and play video games all the time. Okay, it's like, I've seen it firsthand. Like, even within my mind, it's like I can be an absolute beast and like hyper focused on like one like task, and like not think about anything else. Or in like the next day, I can be like, if I messed up my sleep schedule or whatever, and I don't feel good, it's like I'm out of it. I like do not want to do anything. don't want to do anything, I'm miserable. Um, so yeah, yes. What I'm trying to say is like, yeah, I you have a lot of control over what you're able to achieve and what you're able to withstand. Okay, and it's like meditation. This includes like getting a lot of stress out of your life, getting a lot of, I mean, just taking control over your life and like managing your stress at work. I've read a handful of books on stoicism. I really enjoy stoicism as a way of just removing stress and like focusing your energy on the places in your life that you can control. Um, and I think all this amounts to my ability to do what I do, right? To focus so much on learning. And there's people out there who will say, well, I don't have to do any of that. I just like, and then like their CEO, like they started up a company, they put in like 13 hours a day, whatever. I don't doubt they exist, but like that wasn't me, not at all. But I mean, I've done my best to forge myself into that kind of person, and in a way that's like almost just as precious to me, because it's like that means like this life is like something I've created for myself. Like you ask my parents, like I'm not even joking. Ask my parents what I was like younger when I was in high school and stuff before I started studying Japanese. Ask them what kind of kid was Jacob. I just said my name, but yeah, my name is Jacob, by the way. Um, and they'll tell you he bounced around a lot. He didn't really like, he couldn't hold his interest in stuff for very long. He'd get bored very quickly. If he wasn't immediately good at it, he wouldn't continue it. Um, he wasn't super disciplined. He got in trouble with his teachers for like not doing homework, yada yada yada. Um, like I was not a disciplined person. I was not a go-getter. Right? I just wanted to play video games. So yeah, I mean, it's a change I was able to enact in myself, and I would encourage you to at least believe that you have the ability to do something similar to yourself. I mean, the book Peak I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite lines is like that talent doesn't really matter nearly as much as people think it does, and the adaptability of the human brain is the real gift, and everyone has it. It's just a matter of harnessing that adaptability. Um, right? So it's very easy to think like, oh, I could never do that. I could never do this. In fact, that was one reason I became a teacher. So I was good at programming. I was like, I want to do something I suck at. I'm really bad with people. Let's do it. Let's be a teacher, right? And like recognizing that you have so much potential, and like, but in order to harness that potential, you cannot go into autopilot mode. You cannot just go about your learning without thinking about stuff critically. You cannot just coast, right? If you take the coaster approach, you'll get coaster results, right? At the end of the day, I don't know, the pain, all of the hard work, you kind of forget about it. It's like that time after, it's like the period of time after you've worked out, right? It just feels good. Like you just feel nice. So I'd encourage people who are serious about improving in something to find it in themselves to shape their lives in a way where they can enjoy that discomfort, enjoy improving. And that was actually, I mean, that was a big reason I decided to pick up art. And there's one thing I want to talk about with that, but I like never I drew, I think maybe one picture outside of art class that I could recall in my entire life, and I was always the guy who wasn't artistic. I sucked at being artistic. But I found there is an interesting quote. There's two things that really prompted me. One of them was, um, it was Japanese. What was it? Oh, I can't remember. But it was like the idea of like wanting to learn more about something is increased by learning about something. In other words, like in more natural English, the more you learn about something, the more you will be compelled to like want to learn more about it, right? It's like things that you know a lot about become more interesting. It's like a good example is I don't like football. I played it when I was younger, but I don't like watching it. But like, if the more it's very easy to imagine. The more someone learned about teams and like how football works and like the intricacies of the game, the more it would become interesting to them, right? Like, what is interesting to you is a very it's a variable factor. Like, the more you learn about something, the more interesting it'll be, right? And I kind of wanted to test that. I was also drawn to art because illustrators. I'd seen talk on YouTube about how cutthroat it was. It was like, if you don't have like the kakugo to like dedicate a year of your life at least, like you don't even think about becoming like a pro illustrator or whatever. It's like very very cutthroat. And I really liked that. It was like it seemed interesting. So I was like, okay, this would be interesting. I've never done this thing. I'm not interested in it at all. Was never interested in it. Could I, like, how could I manage to learn applying the principles that I talk so much about learning Japanese, applying them to art? So deliberate practice, like you try to do something, you fail, you figure out where you went wrong, and then you like readjust, like yada yada yada. The basic idea of deliberate practice, apply that to art, and how much could I enjoy doing it? And so I'm 4 months in. Okay, I said I am at least going to do it for a year, probably more. 4 months in, I sent a picture somewhere, actually on Wanikani forums that I can link to later. My 4 months progress, I've improved significantly, but almost more importantly is at the start I honestly didn't like it too much. I remember like I was riding my motorcycle around Fukushima. I remember kind of riding my motorcycle and be like, oh, like I gotta go back home and like I guess I'll like draw a bit. Wasn't too interested in it. Like I mean, it was like whatever at the start. But the more you learn about it, the more I learned about it, the more it was like, okay, like you can now start to appreciate other people's artistic design decisions. You can understand more of like the nuance of the stuff. Like, yeah. And it became increasingly obvious that like, I don't know, humans are just super moldable, man. I mean, it sounds bad, but you can manipulate yourself into doing whatever you want to do, really. I mean, so yeah, like now I'm really enjoying it. I've had days where I've put in like 13, 14 hours and enjoyed it. I got a drawing tablet, a screen drawing tablet. I used to have a non-screen drawing tablet. And yeah, I mean, you can do the same. Like, you can do the same for any aspect of Japanese. Like, I refused to get into listening when I first moved here. I could barely stand it. But again, I put in work to find certain VTubers I enjoy, and I just did it. That's what you gotta do at the end of the day. At this point, I'm just rambling. But the last thing I do want to say is, it's becoming increasingly apparent to me. It's like I'm learning illustration, by the way, in Japanese. I don't really read any English sources. A lot of the stuff I like do like Japanese style anime illustration is in Japanese, right? Obviously. So I still listen to Japanese every night before bed. Talks about illustration typically, or like the idea of becoming good at illustration, yada yada yada. And even then, it's become very apparent to me that language learning is not like, it's not like either you maintain it or it's like, what was it? It's either you're improving or you're maintaining it. Like, to me, it's like I feel like I'm like maintaining it is like a fantasy. I feel like if you're not improving, you're probably getting worse. And in my case, like I've moved to like having improving not being my focus anymore, and I feel like yeah, I actually am kind of getting worse. Um, so I'll have to be careful about that. Um, so yeah, I don't know. And I've ran out of things that I want to say. I'm sure I could come up with certain things that if I wanted to, but uh, at this point, you guys have been listening for long enough, so I'll let you go. I appreciate anyone who's listened this far in, and I definitely even more appreciate anyone who's been willing to get something or been able to get something out of it, and especially those who've like left a nice comment. On my last one, it got shared around quite a bit to other language learning community. I only meant it to be on WaniKani, and I even unlisted the video, and it still managed to get around to other communities. And I found it randomly posted, which was weird, seeing my face. But yeah, and I got a lot of feedback from people on Discord who messaged me and were like, "It's a great video," and they really enjoyed listening to it. And thank you to all those people. I I enjoy rambling, so it's a symbiotic relationship we have now, isn't it? But yeah, I guess if I had to leave you with one word, I guess, or one idea, I mean, it would be in this case for listening and speaking. I started off with such a bonus that I'm hesitant to give any specific advice for like listening and speaking because I know my starting point was very different, right? I mean, it was. If someone out there was in a similar boat to me, I'm sure this would be like a gold mine for them, like hear kind of how I went about it, because it is such a rare situation to start listening and speaking after 6,000 hours. But yeah, for most people, I can't say shit and have confidence it'll apply to your life when it comes to listening and speaking. So just in general, I mean, if you're trying to aim for the top in any given field, um, be careful not to go on autopilot and constantly be thinking about your learning and curate your environment and your internal state such that it makes it easier. I mean, do not underestimate, please do not underestimate how much control you have over over your ability to enjoy the difficult things in life. And those difficult things, I mean, those are often the most valuable. And I guess if you don't want to do that, that's fine. But I mean, I'll tell you what my mom always told me whenever I had the chance to do something, but I didn't. She said, well, I guess you don't want it enough. And that's okay. I mean, you don't have to want everything. In fact, with my current coworker, I said one word, but it's getting a bit longer now, isn't it? With my current coworker, he has a very similar mindset to me. It's funny. We have, we call ourselves Team All or Nothing. We go in all or nothing. And what I've talked about a lot in this video is the all. I'm all in on Japanese, learning all in on Japanese, like learning a ton. And it's paying dividends like there's no tomorrow. My entire life exists solely because I've studied Japanese as hard as I did. And I'm very, very happy I did. But just as important as the all is the nothing. There's a lot of stuff I've removed from my life. Right? And that's just as important. Like, be careful not to give yourself time or give time to the stuff that's really not important to you. Right? It's very, very easy nowadays to have a lot of fat in your life. Social media, like, there's so much stuff nowadays begging for your attention. If you can maybe leverage that to your advantage, great. But other than that, be very, very careful about what you give your attention to. Life is just jikan no haibun. Like, you're just allocating your time to different things. Whether you're conscious of it or not, it gets allocated one way or another. Day is done when the day is done. Um, if you want results, yeah, get results. And oh god damn it, I remembered one final thing I wanted to say. So there's often a lot of talk about the most efficient way to learn Japanese. And I've talked about efficient ways, deliberate practice for efficient ways of learning stuff in general. Right? How deliberate practices apply to Japanese is another story. But in general, like, I mean, there's always talk about XYZ method is most efficient. Then there's always the pushback of do whatever works for you. And I've given my opinion on the whole what works for you statement. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I think it's often used to absolve oneself of like the responsibility to like think about what they're doing. Like you find something that you enjoy and that you're comfortable with and you're like, okay, I'm just going to do this. This is just my thing. I'm just doing this. This works for me. I'm not going to think about how I can improve my situation, how I can improve my yada yada. It's like it's just giving up on thinking in some capacity, right? Because in the end, there is no what works for you. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that could work for you, and there's also a question of what would you work for, right? So I think I think it's overused, right? And it kind of gets a bad rap because of that. My honest opinion is that, I mean, we're all humans. I think we all have very similar brains. At the end of the day, like, I mean, like we at the end of the day have very, very similar brains. They're much more similar than they are different. I can't wait for the day where we have an alien species come to us with a completely different like brain structure, so we can actually finally appreciate, hey, wait, we are actually all the same species, and we all, despite having like minor differences and tweaks that are noticeable, it's like at the end of the day we're all like the same species, yo. So I think the structure for how to learn, like how the brain acquires new information and how the brain adapts, is largely the same person to person. In fact, like current scientific research suggests this, and a lot of research that suggests otherwise, like the whole visual learner and all that stuff, has actually been debunked. So I think in general there is probably a general framework, a most efficient framework for how to learn any language, and I don't see any reason to deny it. Again, like the pitch thing though, I think the problem is that it's like people are unable to like identify that fact, and so like they don't even stand at the start line for having the conversation, because it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if there's a most efficient method out there, because efficiency isn't everything, right? To give you a very basic example, let's say that there's a way of learning Japanese, and like we'll say how we can quantify your improvement in points, and this method gives you 100 points an hour, super efficient, 100 points an hour, and this other method gives 30 points an hour. It's very clear which one's more efficient. But what if you consider that the 30.1 an hour, you can do it for 4 hours a day? The efficient one though, person A, they can only manage 1 hour of it. Okay. At the end of the day, who's improving more? The person who's doing it for 4 hours. Less efficient, but when you count the fact that they're able to do it for longer, they're able to improve more in a given year, right? And there's other things, like just because it's more efficient doesn't mean that you can do it in all environments. There's some stuff that you can only do on your phone or in between your downtime, yada yada yada. Like, there's some stuff that is more engaging to certain people, right? It doesn't matter how efficient something is if you're not engaged with it. So like, I don't know. Again, I think people get so caught up on this idea of like, oh, is there efficient or is it not? And like, yes, of course, there's going to be one way that that harnesses the adaptability of the brain better than others. But the adaptability of the brain isn't the only limiting factor, right? The brain isn't only comprised of the part of it that acquires new knowledge, right? There's other parts of the brain at play here. Your ability to focus, how much of the content you find engaging, right? Yada yada yada. Um, and again, like I said, like things that you can do that utilize your time, even if it's not as efficient. Um, like listening, maybe able to utilize certain methods, just popping headphones in my ear before I go to the convenience store. Like, there's a lot more at play, okay? And I don't see any reason to, like, I guess, deny the fact that there is efficiency, like, there is an efficiency factor, right, at play. I don't see any reason to deny that. But again, that's all it is. It's a factor among many. And I think that your goal should be to I think I mentioned in my last video, just maintain the efficient framework as much as possible while balancing it out with the other factors at play. Again, like your ability to focus, how much stress the method causes you. The more stressed you are, the less you're going to learn. And the less you're probably going to continue. Like just there's a lot of stuff to consider. And also how efficient is the method? Okay, how efficient is it at actually getting you to the goal you want to get to, right? Maybe it's efficient at one thing, but you care more about getting good at another. So hopefully, maybe I guess that's how I should end the video, is there is no right way to do anything, and the most objective part about our experiences are similarities in our brains, but again, that's only one factor, because like again, the similarities in how we learn in our brains it's only one part of the bigger picture. So maximize time, maximize focus as much as possible, maximize, again, the deliberate practice, like keeping yourself outside your comfort zone, maximize them all within like reasonable balance with each other, and you'll be fine. You will be fine. And that's exactly what I plan on doing for drawing. Like, I didn't mention it explicitly, but like I feel like I've moved like from drawing, or from Japanese to drawing, as like my focus skill. I guess I've done this in the past too, like with programming to some extent, but yeah, but now it's like it's not necessarily for work, which programming was. It's more like, or I guess same with my investing. It's like it's not for monetary purposes, for like living. It's for it's a hobby. It's a hobby similar to Japanese. I just happen to take my hobbies more seriously than most. So yeah, we're about 300 something hours into drawing, and maybe one day I'll post an update on that, and I'll be a case study on deliberate practice, because I'll be able to literally show, here's what I did from zero in a field that I did not care anything about until I was 25 now, by the way, and here's learning this from adulthood. So I'm making sure to track my progress and the different things I'm doing, so it'll be interesting to see. Thank you for everyone who has listened to all 3 hours. God. And yeah, I guess all I can say is I hope you got your time's worth, and best of luck with whatever it is you want out of life. Best of luck with whatever it is you want to learn. And it sounds cheesy, but you can do it. You absolutely can do it. And if you can, I guarantee you'll look back and you'll be surprised at where the time has gone. And hopefully when that time comes, we can meet, and I'll have the chance to hear about your journey, because I enjoy listening to that kind of stuff. Yeah, until then, best of luck. keep your head down. Don't worry about what other people are doing too much. Just focus on yourself, focus on your learning, focus on keeping your own life intact. And the goal line just keeps getting further away. So enjoy your day to day, and you'll be getting there in no time. All right. See ya. Thanks for listening.